Chapter 1: The Azure Pavilion Club. "Listen up, Madeline," the manager's words were a low hiss in her ear. "The client in this suite is a major player. You give him exactly what he wants. You do whatever he asks. You play your cards right, I'll double your pay for tonight." Madeline stood there in a scandalously short dress, her beautiful features hidden under a mask of heavy makeup. She listened numbly, her senses deadened to the world, until the words "double your pay" finally registered. "Understood, manager." Seeing her compliance, he nodded, satisfied. "Maddie, of all the girls here, I've always had the highest hopes for you. Don't let me down." As he finished, his hand snaked out and squeezed her waist. Madeline had long grown numb to these casual violations. She lowered her head and endured it in silence. The manager led her toward the private suite. At the door, his phone rang, and he waved her in, telling her to go on ahead. A cacophony of noise spilled from the room. "Mr. Fletcher, we booked this whole place to welcome you back to the country. Hope you like it. That parcel of land I'm bidding on next month, I'm counting on your help, Mr. Fletcher. You're a legend in this city, sir. In just a few years, you've brought all those old money dynasties to their knees." Madeline had just reached the doorway when the name, Fletcher, struck her heart like a physical blow. Then, more fawning voices drifted out. "I heard you had a college girlfriend, Mr. Fletcher. The one who not only dumped you, but framed you for a crime that sent you to prison for 3 years. I've got my hands on her file. Just say the word, and I'll take care of." Before the man could finish, the figure who had been sitting impassively in the center of the sofa slowly lifted his gaze. An icy stare shot across the room. The speaker froze, caught in the predator's glare. Before he could react, one of Jasper Fletcher's bodyguards kicked him violently to the floor. In the next instant, the bodyguard drew a knife and slammed it through the man's hand, pinning it to the carpet. Blood sprayed. "Arg!" The room gasped in shock. The bodyguard, his face a cold mask, swiftly dragged the man by his legs and threw him toward the door. "Remember this. That woman is a line you don't cross with Mr. Fletcher." Outside, Madeline's hands slowly clenched into fists. A terrible premonition washed over her. She turned to find the manager and beg him to switch her out for the night. But before she could take a step, the hushed room erupted again with obsequious laughter. "Don't be angry, Mr. Fletcher. The man's an idiot. We've ordered some entertainment for you. Let's drink the night away." Just as the words were spoken, the suite door was thrown open. In that instant, her eyes met those of the man enthroned in the seat of power. Time stopped. Madeline felt as if every capillary in her body had been slashed open by a razor, drenching her in a torrent of her own blood. It was him, Jasper Fletcher. The memories were carved into her bones. 6 years had passed, but the past felt like yesterday. A storm of complex emotions raged inside her, so violent that her fingertips trembled. Upon seeing her, Jasper Fletcher's already cold, dark eyes turned black with something deeper. He stared at her for a long, long time. Then a slow, cruel smile stretched his lips. The others, thinking he was interested in the girl, were ecstatic that their choice had pleased him. They scrambled to make the introduction. "Mr. Fletcher, this woman is the club's top earner. They say she's not just a great hostess, but a phenomenal dancer, too." Jasper raised an eyebrow, a chilling smirk playing on his lips. "Oh." Sensing his interest, one of the men grabbed Madeline and pushed her forward. "What are you waiting for, Mr. Fletcher wants a show." Dance, 100 eyes fixed on her, the world spun. In the past, she would have walked away without a second glance. But she was no longer the pampered heiress Madeline Marshall. She needed the money. She dug her nails into her palms, and just as she was about to move, Jasper, who had remained silent, lifted his hand and hurled his champagne flute at her feet. It shattered with a deafening crash. He looked up, his gaze falling on the glittering shards of glass. "Take off your shoes," he said, his voice flat, "and dance on that." Everyone was stunned. The color drained from Madeline's face, but the men in the room, veterans of such decadent playgrounds, quickly recovered. They'd seen plenty of powerful men with strange appetites. One of them shoved Madeline again. "Didn't you hear Mr. Fletcher? Get to it." There was no room for defiance. Biting her lip so hard she tasted blood, Madeline bent down in front of them all, slipped off her shoes, and slowly stepped onto the bed of broken glass. Once, she'd sprained her ankle while dancing. He had seen the swelling and his eyes had turned red. He wasn't a man of many sweet words, but that day, he had said the one thing that had captured her heart completely. Don't ever let yourself get hurt again. When you're in pain, I hurt more than you do. Glass bit deep into the soles of her feet. Sharp, searing pain shot up her legs, and her face went white. The next second, she clenched her jaw, forced the agony down, and began to dance. It was like walking on knife points. Every step was a fresh wave of torture. She didn't know how long she danced. The glass was embedded in her feet. The floor beneath her was slick with a spreading pool of her own blood. Jasper watched, his expression unreadable. Only when the pool of blood grew significantly larger did he finally speak. What do you all think of her performance? No one could decipher the mogul's intent, so no one dared to answer. Finally, one of the bolder ones stammered, "Excellent." Jasper's voice was cool. "If it's so excellent, why isn't anyone tipping?" The men exchanged glances. One of them caught on immediately, pulled out a wad of cash, and tentatively threw it at Madeline. The bills struck her face. Her lips trembled. Seeing this, Jasper's lips curled into a smile. That was the signal. The others quickly followed suit, grabbing stacks of cash and pelting her with them. Countless bills slapped against her skin, accompanied by jeers and laughter. The humiliation was absolute. Madeline kept her head down, staring at the money scattered on the floor, seeing it for what it was, her shattered pride. But she couldn't stop. She forced a smile onto her face and danced with even more energy, ignoring the bloody ruin of her feet. Through the haze of men, she looked at the figure sitting in the distance, a king holding court. He had changed. The sweet boy who used to blush and call her his darling was gone, replaced by a ruthless titan of industry. And she had changed, too. The bright, audacious heiress had fallen, becoming a hostess anyone could humiliate. A perfect, dramatic reversal of fortunes. Eventually, the room emptied out, one by one. Inside the suite, Madeline knelt on the floor, ignoring the shards of glass still buried deep in her feet, and began picking up the money bill by bill. 1, 10, 20. She was halfway through when the door suddenly swung open. Jasper Fletcher, who had long since been escorted out by his entourage, had returned. He walked toward her, the sound of his leather shoes on the floor heavy and deliberate, each step closer than the last. Hearing his approach, Madeline's hands froze. She gripped her left hand with her right, trying to stop the shaking. In the next moment, he was standing over her, his deep voice washing down. "Madeline. Long time no see." She knew he hadn't come back to reminisce. She kept her head lowered, her voice a raw, barely audible whisper. I'm sorry, I know you hate me." At her words, Jasper let out a cold laugh. "Sorry. What exactly does Miss Marshall mean by that? Are you sorry for the broke kid whose heart you played with? Or are you sorry for the boyfriend you falsely accused on the stand?" Madeline trembled, unable to utter a single word. His voice, sharp as ice, cut through her again. "I never used to believe in karma. But seeing you like this today, I heard the Marshall Corporation went bankrupt a few years ago. For the great Miss Marshall to end up like this, I guess you could say the tables have turned, couldn't you?" She knew he was deliberately shaming her. For what happened back then, he had every right to seek any revenge he wished. She remained silent. Seeing her muteness, Jasper suddenly smiled. "Miss Marshall danced beautifully tonight. In addition to the cash, I have one last gift for you." With that, there was a soft clink. A plain ring, broken cleanly in two, landed on the floor in front of her. In that moment, Madeline forgot how to breathe. It was the ring Jasper had used to propose to her 6 years ago. That year, the quiet, serious boy had held her under a sycamore tree. "Maddie, I have nothing right now, but just wait for me. Give me 6 years. I'll give you the grandest wedding, the most expensive diamond, and I will make you my wife." Now, he had made it. He stood at the very pinnacle of success, but the ring he had so carefully placed on her finger was now in 2 pieces. Just like their love, shattered. After tossing the ring, Jasper turned and left. The moment the suite door clicked shut, the dam inside Madeline finally broke. Shaking uncontrollably, she carefully picked up the two halves of the broken ring from the filthy floor and clutched them to her chest. The pain was so intense it felt like her heart was being ripped apart. Tears streamed down her face. "I'm sorry, Jasper. I'm so sorry," but in her current state, even grief was a luxury she couldn't afford. After a minute, she ruthlessly suppressed the agony in her chest, wiped her tears, and limped back to the staff room. She gave her wounds a cursory cleaning and scrubbed the thick makeup from her face, revealing a beautiful, tired complexion. She changed into a simple set of clothes, tied her hair into a ponytail, and rushed home. In the run-down apartment, Madeline crept inside, heading straight for the bedroom. She saw her daughter, Joy, sleeping peacefully in her small bed. Her eyes instantly reddened, and the exhaustion of the day seemed to vanish. The little girl was clutching a drawing. The words on it were crooked and childlike. "I have the best mommy in the world." A fresh wave of emotion pricked Madeline's eyes. She gently slipped the drawing from her daughter's grasp and placed a soft kiss on her cheek. After tucking Joy in, Madeline moved to the small desk and opened the second-hand laptop she'd saved up for last month. Still no response to the dozens of resumes she'd sent out. The hostess gig at the club paid well, but she needed so much more. She knew it wasn't enough. She had to keep juggling multiple jobs, but she had dropped out of college in her senior year to have her baby. Without a degree, finding a high-paying job was a fantasy. She closed the laptop in disappointment. Unable to resist, she took the two halves of the ring from her pocket. She switched on the desk lamp and tried to fit the pieces together. But no matter how she tried, they wouldn't join. She kept trying over and over until exhaustion finally claimed her. She slumped over the desk and fell into a deep sleep. It was a long, long dream. Chapter 2. For the first 20 years of her life, Madeline Marshall had been the treasured pearl of her family, living a life almost entirely free of worry. During her freshman year of college, she fell for Jasper Fletcher, the campus heartthrob at first sight. Back then, Madeline was the bright and audacious belle of the campus. Jasper was the cool, aloof prodigy, academically brilliant, but emotionally distant, immune to the charms of every girl who tried. She pursued him relentlessly for 6 months with no success. Finally, frustrated by his coldness, she declared she was giving up. That was what it took for Jasper to realize he had already fallen for her. He waited outside her dorm all night, and just like that, they were together. Once Jasper opened up, he spoiled her to an extent that was almost unbelievable. Madeline had a fiery temper, and sometimes even she would ask him if he found her too difficult. He would be reading a book, but he'd always pull her into his arms. "You're the one I chose. It's my job to spoil you." She would pretend to be angry. "Aha, so you do think I'm difficult," and he would lean in and silence her with a kiss. His cool voice would be laced with a smile. "I love you, difficult and all." They dated from freshman to senior year, becoming the campus's legendary couple, stunning everyone who had bet on their inevitable breakup. Jasper was poor back then, but he would move heaven and earth to give her the best of everything. He used his prize money from every academic competition to buy her gifts. He secretly worked multiple part-time jobs just to afford a necklace for her. He stayed up for days and nights to handcraft a miniature carousel for her. The dream flickered through their first hug, their first kiss, the first time they missed her curfew and got a hotel room, where one thing eagerly led to another, but the final image was of her, standing on the witness stand in a courtroom. Her face was blank as she pointed at Jasper. "I saw it with my own eyes. He's the one who ran that man over." In that moment, Jasper, who had always been so proud, stared at her with reddened eyes. The light in them was gone. When she woke from the dream, the sun was already bright. Madeline touched her face. It was wet with tears. The memories were still so sharp, the pain still visceral. "Jasper, I'm sorry, but I hope you never, ever find out the real reason I sent you to prison." She wiped her tears and was about to wake Joy. But when she turned, she saw that Joy's bed was empty. Then she heard a crash from the kitchen. Madeline rushed out to see Joy sprawled on the kitchen floor. She scooped her daughter up in a panic. Joy, are you hurt?" Joy shook her head bravely and pointed to the stove. "Mommy, Joy knows you're tired. I made you breakfast." A small stool was pushed up against the counter. In the pan sat a single, scorched fried egg. Madeline's nose stung with emotion. Her Joy was only 5. Other children her age were coddled and fussed over, but her daughter had to endure such a difficult life with her. She carried Joy to the dining table. "You're such a good girl, Joy, but please, don't ever do this again. Mommy's heart would break if you got hurt. Just wait, and I'll make you something delicious." Returning to the stove, Madeline fried a perfect, golden egg and placed it in a bowl for her daughter. As they ate, she switched on the battered, second-hand TV across the room. She was about to change it to the cartoon channel when she saw Jasper's face fill the screen. He was on a talk show. The host asked him, "Mr. Fletcher, everyone is dying to know about your love life. What do you look for in a partner?" Jasper replied coolly, "Someone simple and kind." "Is that your only requirement?" A small smile played on his lips. "I was once hurt by someone scheming and selfish. Since then, character is the only thing I value." The host knew the man at the top of the Forbes list had a 3-year prison sentence in his past, but she didn't dare bring it up directly. She laughed and changed the subject. "You've achieved so much, Mr. Fletcher. Looking back, is there anything you'd like to say to your past self?" Jasper looked directly into the camera, his voice cold. "I'd tell him, you were a fool." Madeline felt the air leave her lungs. A ringing filled her ears, and she couldn't hear anything the host said after that. Until, at the end of the interview, Jasper made a major announcement. "The recent rumors are not unfounded. I am indeed engaged to Penelope Sterling, the heiress of the Morning Wind Group. Our wedding will be held soon." The chopsticks in Madeline's hand clattered to the floor. She stared blankly at Jasper's face. He was getting married. Of course. He was successful now. It was time for him to start a family of his own. She should be happy for him. As she sat there, lost in a daze, there was a sudden, sickening thud. Joy had fallen from her chair. Blood was pouring from her nose and mouth. "Joy," Madeline screamed, scrambling to pick up her daughter and racing for the hospital. Mercy General Hospital. Madeline burst through the doors like a madwoman, grabbing the nearest nurse. "My daughter is bleeding again. She has congenital leukemia." The nurse immediately called for a gurney, and Joy was rushed into the emergency room. After more than 3 hours, Joy was finally stabilized. The doctor emerged and said to Madeline, "You can't delay this any longer. You need to start raising the money for her surgery as soon as possible." Madeline was desperate. She had been saving for years, but she was nowhere near the astronomical cost of the procedure. "I'll find a way." The doctor had been treating Joy for a long time and knew her situation was difficult. "What about the child's father? Even if you're separated, you can still get child support from him." An image of a face flashed in Madeline's mind. She shook her head, her eyes red-rimmed. "Her father passed away, thank you, doctor." After thanking him, she hurried to Joy's room. Joy was awake. In a small, milky voice, she asked, "Mommy, am I going to die?" Madeline's eyes welled up. She quickly covered Joy's mouth. "Don't say that. Mommy needs to watch you grow up strong and healthy." She squeezed Joy's hand tightly. "Be a brave girl, Joy. Don't be scared. Mommy's here. You rest now, okay? I'm going to go make some money." Though Joy didn't want her to leave, she nodded obediently. Madeline kissed her, asked a nurse to keep an eye on her, and then rushed out. As she left the hospital, a luxury car swept past her and pulled up to the entrance. Jasper Fletcher stepped out, carrying Penelope Sterling in his arms. A crowd of hospital staff immediately swarmed out, bowing respectfully. "Mr. Fletcher. Mr. Fletcher, the director is waiting for you in the VIP ward. The head of orthopedics is on standby to consult for Miss Sterling." Jasper's face was cold as he walked in, his expression softening only when he looked down at Penelope. Behind them, people whispered, "He spoils his fiancée so much. It's just a sprained ankle. Did you see the size of that diamond on her hand? I heard they're getting married soon. So jealous." "I heard he was just a broke kid 6 years ago. Had a girlfriend who dumped him for being poor and then sent him to prison. I wonder if she knows how rich he is now. She must be kicking herself. Though Penelope had only sprained her ankle, Jasper had mobilized an army. He booked out an entire floor and assembled a team of specialists. It wasn't until the afternoon, after her tests were done, that she fell asleep. He had a business call, and not wanting to wake her, he stepped into the hallway to take it. The call lasted about 10 minutes. After he hung up, he felt a small tug on his pant leg. Jasper looked down and saw a little girl, as exquisitely carved as a pink jade doll. Her clothes were simple, but her eyes were huge and bright. The little girl looked up at him, and her first words were, "Mister, are you very rich?" The bluntness of it left him speechless. Jasper was a cold man. Normally, he would have ignored her and walked away. But looking into those strangely familiar eyes, for some reason, he found himself answering. "Why do you ask?" the little girl said. "Because you have a big entourage. I saw the hospital director pour tea for you, and the professors I can't afford are all hovering around you. Can you save me?" Her little lip trembled. "I think I'm going to die, but I don't have any money. I'm not scared of dying, but my mommy seems very scared. She cries secretly every day, and she has to work so hard to make money." Jasper frowned. "What's wrong with you?" She shook her head. "I don't know. I just know my blood is white, I think." White blood? Was she trying to say leukemia? Seeing such a small child afflicted with such a terrible disease, he felt a rare surge of patience. Noticing she only ever mentioned her mother, he asked, "And your father?" The little girl shook her head. "My daddy is dead." "Mister, it's okay if you can't save me, but after I die, can you take care of my mommy?" "My mommy is so pretty. She can cook and sing lullabies, and she's so gentle. She's the best mommy in the whole world. Can you take care of her like you were taking care of that lady just now? I'm scared she'll be all alone after I die." Jasper's expression softened slightly. He had sponsored many sick children over the years, and guessed the girl was saying this out of desperation. He was about to say that he couldn't take care of her mother, but he could fund her surgery, when a familiar voice, tinged with panic, called out from behind him. "Joy." Joy, the little girl's face, which had been on the verge of tears, instantly lit up. "Mommy," Jasper whipped around. In that moment, a familiar face came into view. He and Madeline were staring at each other. Instantly, the faint trace of warmth on his face vanished. His expression turned to stone. Madeline froze, never imagining she would find Joy with him. She rushed over, scooped up her daughter, and immediately tried to leave. But a hand clamped down on her shoulder, hard, forcing her to turn and face him. She was met with eyes brewing a storm. Jasper's voice was a low growl. "Whose child is this?" Joy looked to be about 5 years old. Back then, they were still together. Madeline's heart hammered against her ribs. She opened her mouth, but no words came out. How could she tell him? Tell him that she discovered she was pregnant after she sent him to prison? That she knew she could never marry anyone else, so she had selfishly decided to keep their child? No. Jasper hated her too much. He would never love their daughter. "Answer me," he suddenly roared. Seeing him so fierce, Joy started to cry and pushed at him with her tiny hands. "You're mean to my mommy. I don't want you to take care of her anymore." Not wanting her daughter to see this, Madeline quickly handed the child to a passing nurse. Then she turned to Jasper. "Joy is adopted. The orphanage said they'd give me a large sum of money if I adopted her. My family had just gone bankrupt, so I agreed. I guess I had bad luck and picked a sick one. But after a few years, I grew attached, so I didn't get rid of her." She tried to sound casual, to paint herself as the money-grubbing person he believed her to be. But Jasper just stared at her, his gaze heavy and searching. Then, the rage in his eyes slowly dissipated. It seemed he actually believed her. Because in his mind, that was exactly the kind of selfish person she was. He slowly released his grip, his voice dripping with scorn. "You're capable of getting attached." A sharp pain lanced through Madeline's heart. She said nothing. Just then, a nurse walked over. "Mr. Fletcher, Miss Sterling is awake." Jasper's expression changed instantly. He turned and strode away without another word. Madeline watched him go, her hands trembling, then hurried back to Joy's side. In the room, Joy started crying as soon as she saw her. She hugged Madeline and apologized. "I'm sorry, Mommy. I didn't know he was a bad man. I just saw he had money and wanted him to take care of you, wah." Madeline's heart ached with a mixture of sorrow and love. She wiped her daughter's tears. "It's not your fault, Joy. Just from now on, if you see him, stay far away." She was terrified that Jasper's hatred for her would extend to Joy. The very next day, her fear became reality. A nurse suddenly informed her that she had to leave with Joy immediately. The hospital could no longer treat her. Madeline's face fell. "What do you mean?" "Joy has always been treated at Mercy General." Mercy General was a private hospital, but it had the most advanced and authoritative medical equipment in the country. And the doctors here knew Joy's case best. The nurse could only shake her head helplessly. "There's nothing I can do. The order came from the top. It seems you've offended a major shareholder of our hospital." Madeline's heart stopped. She understood immediately. Jasper Fletcher. It was Jasper Fletcher who was kicking her daughter out. Learning that he was in the VIP ward, she rushed over. She pushed past the bodyguards and burst into Penelope's room. She found Jasper in the middle of feeding Penelope a bowl of soup. He paused when he saw her, his expression turning to ice. Penelope, who also recognized Madeline, looked at her disheveled state with unconcealed contempt. Madeline didn't care. She dropped to her knees with a thud, begging him, "Mr. Fletcher, you can do whatever you want to me, take any revenge you want. But please, I'm begging you, leave my daughter alone. She has to have her surgery here. She can't leave." Jasper remained cold. How did they let just anyone in here? Instantly, 4 or 5 black-suited bodyguards rushed in and started to drag her out. Madeline struggled desperately. "I won't go, Jasper Fletcher. I'm begging you, spare my daughter, please. Spare her." But in Jasper's eyes, her desperation was just another performance. His disgust for her now extended to the little girl. Penelope fanned the flames from the sidelines. "Madeline, I hear that daughter of yours is adopted. You, with a heart. I bet she's the kid you had with the other man you cheated with, Chapter 3. She really is adopted," Madeline cried, still struggling. "She's innocent, please, just leave her alone," but Jasper remained unmoved. "Get her out of here," he commanded. She was thrown from the room. Soon after, staff came and forcibly removed both her and Joy from the hospital. Madeline clutched her daughter as they were shoved out the main entrance. The sky outside was a bruised, menacing gray. A storm was about to break. Joy's small body was still frail. She leaned her pale face against Madeline's shoulder, coughing weakly. "Cough, cough, Mommy, are we going home?" Tears welled in Madeline's eyes as she carried her daughter out into the street. "Not home, sweetheart. Mommy's going to find you a new hospital." Joy was young, but she was perceptive. Okay, they hadn't walked far when a roll of thunder split the sky. A torrential downpour began. Madeline held the umbrella over Joy with one hand and clutched her daughter with the other, running from one hospital to the next. But every emergency room was full. They wouldn't admit them. "Please, just let my daughter stay. Doctor, I'm begging you. She's very well behaved. We can share a room with someone else. I don't mind." In the pouring rain, Madeline ran from hospital to hospital. She kept the umbrella firmly over Joy's head, while she herself was soaked to the bone. It was dark by the time she finally found a hospital that would take them. Joy was squeezed into a cramped room with 6 other patients. The day's ordeal had worsened her condition. She developed a high fever and drifted in and out of consciousness. Madeline stayed by her side, not daring to leave for a single moment. She never imagined Jasper's hatred could run so deep. "I'm sorry, Joy. It's all Mommy's fault." Tears streamed down her face, her red-rimmed eyes filled with nothing but a bitter sorrow. But after a few days at the new hospital, Joy's condition began to stabilize. A week later, she was well enough to be temporarily discharged. Joy was 5, the right age for kindergarten. Although her illness often kept her in the hospital, Madeline wanted her to have a chance to be with other children her age. Besides, she couldn't leave her home alone when she went to work. So, once Joy had recovered, she enrolled her in a local kindergarten. A few days passed. Their life slowly returned to a fragile normalcy. but the resumes Madeline sent out remained unanswered. Unable to find a formal job, she continued to work part-time as a hostess and a waitress. On Wednesday, the kindergarten was holding a parent-teacher conference. Madeline's work schedule had always been too packed for her to attend before. This time, not wanting to disappoint Joy, she took the day off. "Mommy," at the kindergarten, Joy's face lit up when she saw her mother. She ran over and threw her arms around her. The other children, seeing Madeline for the first time, began to whisper, "See, she does have a mommy. Her mommy is so pretty. Prettier than your mommy." "Nuh-uh, she's prettier than your mommy," a little girl in a fancy dress pouted. "What's so great about her? Her mom's clothes are so shabby. She must be super poor." This girl, Riley, had always looked down on Joy for her simple clothes. Now, seeing Joy's mother steal the spotlight, she was furious. That is, until two figures appeared at the classroom door. Riley squealed with delight. "Auntie, Uncle, you're here?" Her voice was so loud that Madeline instinctively looked up. There, standing in the doorway, were Jasper Fletcher and Penelope Sterling, holding hands. Madeline's heart lurched, but it was too late to hide. Jasper and Penelope had already seen her. Riley was Penelope's niece. Her parents were overseas, so she had thrown a tantrum until they agreed to come to the conference for her. With her powerful relatives present, Riley's chin shot up with arrogance. "My auntie is way prettier." A life of luxury had certainly polished Penelope to a high shine. Dressed impeccably, she seemed to instantly eclipse the plainly dressed Madeline. Madeline lowered her head, trembling, wanting to avoid their gaze. More than anything, she was terrified they would get Joy kicked out of school. But Riley already disliked Joy, and with her aunt and uncle there to back her up, she became even more arrogant, shooting several dirty looks at Joy and Madeline. As Penelope led Riley past them, she spoke loud enough for everyone to hear. "Riley, darling, remember to stay away from certain people. If the mother is a bar floozy, you can imagine what the daughter is like." She had clearly done her research on Madeline. The aunt and niece both wore identical expressions of disgust. Jasper remained cold and aloof, not once glancing in Madeline's direction. Hearing what Madeline did for a living, the other parents began to look at her with suspicion and judgment. Riley deliberately taunted Joy. "Joy, so your mom's job is to seduce men?" The class fell silent. Joy, however, launched herself at Riley. "You're all bullies," she cried. "Don't you bully my mommy? It happened so fast Madeline couldn't stop her." Riley, caught off guard, stumbled and fell. She immediately burst into tears. Jasper shoved Joy away. Riley scrambled up and pushed back. Joy, already weak, was sent sprawling to the floor by the combined force of the two of them. "Joy," Madeline cried, rushing to pick up her daughter. Jasper simply scooped up Riley, not sparing them a single glance. His voice was cold. "Riley, stay away from people with no breeding." The words struck Madeline like a physical blow. She trembled all over. For the first time since her family's ruin, she found her strength. Her voice, though shaking, was steady. "Joy is always obedient and kind to everyone in this class. Someone here is certainly ill-bred, but it is not her." Jasper looked up, his eyes like chips of ice. But for her daughter's sake, Madeline stood her ground. She held Joy tight and walked out. The outcome was predictable. They were asked to leave the kindergarten. Madeline worked herself to the bone to give her daughter the best of everything. Now, she had no choice but to enroll Joy in a small, shabby community preschool. But Joy was the new kid and struggled to fit in. On top of that, because of her poor health, the other children were reluctant to play with her. The once lively little girl grew more and more silent. Madeline saw it all, and her heart broke. All she wanted was to make enough money for the surgery so they could leave this city for good. To make that money, she drank more and more recklessly at the club, to the point of throwing up blood several times. But even then, she would just swallow a few pills and carry on. Midnight, Madeline staggered out of a private room, drunk. The manager followed her out. "What's with the act? That client was offering a fortune to have you for the night. What's the big deal?" Over the years, Madeline had become numb to harassment and groping, but she still couldn't bring herself to sell her body. She shook her head stubbornly, her words slurred. The manager spat. "You're already a hostess. Stop pretending you're some kind of saint." His eyes roamed over her body, undisguised lust in his gaze. Seeing how drunk she was, his greasy hands shot out and grabbed her. "How about I get a taste first? Come on, Madeline, you'll have to sell it sooner or later anyway." With that, he pinned her against the wall. "Let go, get off me." Madeline had long suspected his intentions. Alarm bells screamed in her head, but she couldn't push his sweaty, overweight body off of her. His tongue licked her neck, and a wave of nausea rose in her throat. She struggled wildly. Her hand fumbled and found a wine bottle on a nearby shelf. She swung it with all her might, smashing it against the back of his head. Crack! The man's body slumped to the floor. Heart pounding in terror, Madeline scrambled away, her eyes wide with fear. But she didn't get far before she saw a group of people standing at the end of the hall. It was Jasper Fletcher, flanked by his assistants. Madeline skidded to a halt, their eyes locking. Jasper's gaze was cold, his eyes lingering on the red marks on her neck. He had been there the whole time, watching her get assaulted and doing nothing. Worse, he now spoke, his voice dripping with contempt. "You're that desperate? You'd even stoop to a man like that?" His words were a knife twisting in her heart, the pain was excruciating. She turned to leave, but he grabbed her wrist. He dragged her into an empty suite. Inside, besides him, were a dozen bodyguards. She tried to struggle, but he slammed her against the wall. "You need money, don't you? I'll give you a chance to earn some." Madeline's heart seized. He hated her. There was no way he would give her an opportunity. As expected, his next words were like ice. "Take your clothes off in front of them. One piece, $10,000. Walk out of here naked. I'll give you $200,000. The blatant humiliation made her face go white. He smirked, his tone venomous. "What? Unwilling? Don't you want to pay for your daughter's treatment?" Madeline flinched, understanding the threat in his voice. She bit her lip, holding it between her teeth until she tasted blood. After a long moment, she looked up at him, fighting back the tears that burned her eyes. "Thank you, Mr. Fletcher, and I beg you, please stop targeting Joy. She's innocent. She could quit this club and find another. But if Jasper Fletcher was determined to ruin her, he could make sure she never found work again." After speaking, she took a deep, shuddering breath. Then, forcing a wanton smile, she began to remove her clothes piece by piece. She wasn't wearing much to begin with. First, the cropped jacket came off. A bodyguard immediately threw a stack of bills at her, then the tank top. Another stack of cash hit her. Next was the bandeau top underneath. As she slowly peeled it down, the men's eyes stuck to her like glue. She reached for the clasp of her skirt. No matter how hard she tried to control it, her body was shaking. Her eyes grew red, and tears began to fall without her permission. Watching the light slowly die in her eyes, like a person slitting their own wrists, Jasper felt a surge of vengeful satisfaction. But after the revenge came an endless, hollow void. As she was about to remove the final scrap of fabric, his face darkened, turning uglier than she had ever seen it. Just as she was about to pull it down, his phone rang. In that moment, he felt an absurd sense of relief. A vein throbbed in his forehead. He grabbed several stacks of bills from the table and hurled them all at her. "Enough! Madeline, don't ever appear in front of me and discuss me again." With that, he turned on his heel and strode out. The bodyguards, seeing their master leave, reluctantly followed. Madeline, wearing only her skirt and bandeau, collapsed to the floor, her face streaked with tears. Once, she wore a skirt that was just a little too short, just because she thought it was pretty. Jasper had gotten jealous and immediately tied his jacket around her waist. He had said, "Maddie, your most beautiful self is for my eyes only." But now, he had chosen to humiliate her in this way. So this was what happened when love turned to hate. It was truly terrifying. She didn't need the manager to fire her. Madeline never went back to the Azure Pavilion Club. Jasper was a frequent guest there for business, and she had wanted to find a new place anyway to avoid him. The consequence was that she now had to spend her days and nights searching for a new job. One night, she came home late and found that Joy wasn't in her bedroom, but the bathroom light was on. She assumed Joy was using the toilet, but when she went in, she found her daughter unconscious on the floor. Surrounding her was a large pool of blood. It had been less than a month since the last time she'd bled like this. Joy Madeline scooped her daughter into her arms and rushed her to the hospital. After a frantic resuscitation, Joy was awake, but the doctor's expression was grim. "The child needs surgery immediately. Her body is at its limit." "What kind of parent are you?" Madeline grabbed the doctor's arm. "Please, save my daughter. I'll get the money for the surgery, I promise. Then you'd better hurry up and get it." Back home, Madeline scraped together every penny she had saved over the years. It was only $30,000, but the leukemia surgery and subsequent treatments would cost at least $100,000. Chapter 4, late that night, Madeline stared at her phone's banking app in a daze. Joy padded out of the bedroom, clutching her teddy bear. "Mommy," Madeline quickly wiped her tears. Joy, why aren't you asleep?" "Mommy, I don't want the surgery anymore." Madeline froze. "Why?" "Because Mommy is so tired." "I don't want Mommy to be so tired." Madeline pulled her daughter into a hug, forcing a smile. "Mommy's not tired at all. All Mommy wants is for Joy to be healthy." They held each other for a long time before she finally coaxed the child back to sleep. Working regular jobs wasn't going to be fast enough. The next day, Madeline secretly sought out an underground blood bank. 3 hours later, she stumbled out of the clinic, her face ashen, clutching a thick envelope of cash. She had given so much blood, but it only came to $3,000. It was a drop in the ocean compared to the $100,000 she needed. Madeline staggered home, the doctor's words echoing in her head. Joy couldn't wait any longer. There was only one option left. She had to tell Jasper Fletcher the truth. She had to hope that, for the sake of his own flesh and blood, he would save Joy's life. She had sworn to herself that she would never have anything to do with him again unless it was a matter of life and death. Now she had truly reached the end of her rope. Back home, Madeline found Joy's birth certificate. Then, she brought Joy home from the hospital just long enough to carefully pluck a strand of her hair and seal it in a small bag. Joy was confused. "Mommy, what are you doing?" Madeline stroked her head, her eyes red. "Joy, from today on, Mommy won't be your mommy anymore. Daddy will come and take you away, and you'll live a life without any worries." Joy didn't understand. "Why can't Daddy take Mommy with us?" Madeline's voice broke as tears streamed down her face. "Because Daddy hates Mommy." "No, I want Mommy. I don't want to go with him," Joy cried, throwing her arms around her. Madeline held her daughter tight, her voice choked with sobs. "Be good, sweetheart. Daddy can make you healthy again. As long as you're happy and healthy, Mommy will do anything." Madeline found Jasper's number online. After steeling herself, she finally made the call. "Hello?" A familiar, deep voice answered. Madeline took a deep breath. "Jasper, it's me." There was a pause on the other end, and then the voice dropped several degrees. "Who gave you permission to call me?" Her hand tightened into a fist. Her tone was desolate. "I have something very important to tell you. Can you please come to my apartment?" "Ha, what do you think?" He was about to hang up. "I promise this is the last time," she shouted. "I really have something crucial to tell you. After this, I will disappear from your life forever." This time, Jasper was silent for a moment. Finally, he said coldly, "Send me the time and address." "Madeline, this had better be important." Relief washed over her. She quickly gave him the details. First, she went to a lab to get the paternity test report. Then she cleaned the small apartment from top to bottom. Finally, she waited, a bundle of nerves and anxiety, for Jasper to arrive. But she waited until the sky grew dark and a heavy rain began to fall. No one came. An hour had passed since their agreed-upon time. Finally, standing by the window, Madeline nervously called him again. Ring, ring. This time the call went unanswered. She waited anxiously. Just as she was about to redial, a loud thud came from behind her. Madeline whipped around, and for a moment her world stopped. Joy had collapsed on the floor, surrounded by a pool of blood. She scrambled to her side and found her daughter's breathing was terrifyingly faint. Madeline frantically dialed 911, but the rain was torrential. After 15 minutes, the ambulance still hadn't arrived. She had no choice. She scooped Joy into her arms, ran downstairs, and stumbled out onto the rain-slicked road. "Stop, please, stop, help my child," but no matter how she pleaded, the cars just sped past, their headlights cutting through the curtain of rain. She fell to her knees, holding her child, bowing her head to the pavement as she begged them to stop. "Save my child, I'm begging you, please save her," but everyone treated her like a madwoman. No one paid her any mind. Just then, Jasper Fletcher's car moved slowly through the downpour, approaching the spot where she knelt. His assistant vaguely saw a woman kneeling in the road ahead. On a compassionate impulse, he asked, "Mr. Fletcher, there's a woman up ahead, kneeling with a child. Should we give them a ride?" Jasper didn't even look up. "Keep driving," he said flatly. The assistant didn't dare stop. He drove on, but a moment later, he glanced nervously in the rearview mirror. "Sir, didn't you agree to meet with Miss Marshall today? Are you sure you want to stand her up for Miss Sterling? If Miss Sterling is afraid of the thunder, we could have sent a bodyguard over first." Jasper looked up, his eyes cold. "When did you get so chatty?" The assistant's throat went dry. Miss Marshall sounded like it might be an emergency." On the phone earlier, Madeline's voice had been so desperate, like a drowning person grasping for a final lifeline. And Mr. Fletcher, he seemed to be that lifeline, but Jasper's voice was like ice. "What, you feel sorry for her? A woman like that? What could possibly be so important?" The assistant immediately fell silent. At that moment, Jasper glanced out the window. His eyes finally fell upon the kneeling mother and child in the downpour. The rain was too heavy for him to see clearly, but something about the scene felt familiar. His heart gave a sudden, violent lurch, but it was only for a second. He looked away, dismissing it as a trick of the light. The thunder grew louder. Thinking of Penelope's fear, he coldly ordered the assistant to drive faster. Just then, the ambulance finally arrived. Madeline climbed in, clutching Joy. One vehicle heading north, one heading south. A white emergency van and a black luxury sedan. They passed each other in the storm, and neither looked back. At the hospital, Madeline paced anxiously outside the emergency room, praying for Joy's safety. But this time, after only half an hour, the doors swung open. A doctor walked out, followed by a gurney covered with a white sheet. In that instant, all the blood in Madeline's body turned to ice. The doctor removed his mask and shook his head. "I'm sorry, we were too late. The child has no pulse. She's gone." Gone. Gone, Madeline's vision swam. The world went white, her mind filled with only that one horrifying word. She lunged toward the gurney, throwing back the white sheet. She saw Joy's small, lifeless face. "Joy, don't scare Mommy, okay? Wake up, please, wake up." Madeline was trembling from head to toe. She touched Joy's skin and felt only the fading warmth of her small body. It was like being plunged into the blackest depths of hell. Her heart had been torn from her chest, only to be ripped to shreds by 1,000 hands. The pain was so intense, Madeline felt like she was dying. Her emotions finally shattered. "Joy, what am I supposed to do without you? What am I going to do? Please, just look at Mommy one more time, please." For a long time, the hospital corridor echoed with Madeline's anguished cries. "My baby, come back. Please come back to Mommy. I'll read you stories, I'll give you goodnight kisses, I'll watch you grow up happy and safe." For all these years, no matter how hard life had been, Madeline had never thought of giving up. Because her child was her reason to live. Now, the last glimmer of light in her life had been extinguished. Madeline clung to Joy's body, refusing to let the nurses take her to the morgue. She held her as if she were still alive, staying with her in the hospital for the entire night. The next day, the sun rose. The torrential rain continued to fall. Madeline, her clothes stained with her daughter's blood, stared blankly out the window. With trembling hands, she took out her phone and made one last call to Jasper Fletcher. Their child was dead, and he knew nothing. "Why didn't you come yesterday? You promised you would. If you had come, you would have known everything." The call connected quickly. She spoke his name, her voice a raw croak. "Jasper, our..." Before she could finish, another voice came through the line. It was Penelope Sterling. Madeline, have you no shame? You're still calling Jasper. Are you actually hoping to get back together with him? Madeline listened numbly to the tirade, her heart clenching tight. So that was why he hadn't come yesterday. He had gone to Penelope. Tears fell, unbidden. She said nothing more, just silently ended the call. Madeline staggered to her feet. Cradling Joy's body, which was now cold to the touch, she took the elevator to the highest floor and climbed onto the hospital roof. The wind was fierce. In the driving rain, Madeline gently nuzzled her child's cheek. Don't be scared, Joy. The road ahead is dark, but Mommy's coming with you. She picked up her phone and composed one last text message. Jasper Fletcher, I'm gone. I won't bother you ever again. She hit send. Then she closed her eyes, held Joy tight, and without a moment's hesitation, stepped off the edge of the 38-story rooftop. It took only a few seconds. Thud. Her body and her child's hit the pavement below. Screams erupted from the street. Oh my God, someone jumped, blood spread across the wet ground. And in Madeline's hand, her phone, its screen shattered, began to vibrate over and over again. Chapter 5. As if by premonition, the moment he saw the text message, the blood in Jasper Fletcher's veins turned to ice. His fingers began to shake. He ignored the confused look from Penelope, dialing the number again and again. It never connected. The futile act was interrupted by a call from his assistant. Mr. Fletcher. The young man's voice was choked with tears. On my way back, I saw a woman holding a child. She jumped from the hospital roof. The dread in Jasper's heart solidified into a terrible certainty, but he refused to acknowledge it. He forced a laugh, his voice painfully hoarse. What's that got to do with me? He said coldly. Did I give you a car just so you could go sightseeing? But the assistant, usually so terrified of him, persisted, his voice trembling as he delivered the truth Jasper could no longer escape. Sir, I think the woman was Madeline Marshall. A clap of thunder exploded outside. Jasper's mind went blank. The phone slipped from his hand and crashed onto the marble floor. He instinctively bent to pick it up, but then straightened, grabbing his coat. Penelope, seeing his distraught state, called out frantically, Jasper, Jasper, what's wrong? Madeline's dead. Jasper's eyes were black and empty. He looked at Penelope, enunciating each word. She died, with the child. Penelope was stunned. She had just spoken to Madeline on the phone. How could a living person just be dead? She gave a dry laugh, the words tumbling out without thought. She's probably faking it, just trying to get your attention. I just took a call from her. Besides, Jasper, you hated her, didn't you? So what if she's dead? What call? Jasper's gaze was like a laser. He turned to Penelope, his face a frozen landscape. Penelope had never seen him like this. Terrified, she realized her mistake and tried to backtrack. Nothing, she just said your name and hung up. You were in the shower. Before she could finish, Jasper was already striding toward the door, his face a death mask. Where are you going? She cried. Penelope, his voice was so cold, it was like death itself calling her name. What happens between me and Madeline is none of your business. He clung to a sliver of hope. His assistant had never met Madeline. What if he was mistaken? Or what if it was Madeline, but she wasn't dead? But he was different. He didn't just know Madeline's face, he had it seared into his soul. Years of hatred and a love that once had fermented into the bitterest of wines, and Jasper had drunk it down, day after day. On the highway, cars sped through the rainy night. He floored the accelerator, seeing the towering hospital building in the distance. A crowd of onlookers still lingered at the entrance. So tragic. I heard she couldn't afford the medical bills. The little girl just wasted away from leukemia. Yeah, what a shame. The mother, too. If you can't afford a kid, why have one? Where's the father? Don't know. But the mom must have been in a bad way. The kid dies, and she can't go on. 30-something floors must be a mess. The bystander's words were carried to him on the wind. The umbrellas in the dark looked like tombstones. Jasper had no umbrella. He stood by his car, the rain soaking him to the bone, blurring his vision. He saw hazmat-suited workers cleaning the pavement with shovels and high-pressure hoses. The bodies were already gone. the rainwater pooling around his feet soaked through his expensive leather shoes. He looked down, suspecting he was standing in a pool of blood, but it was just an illusion. Decedent, Madeline Marshall, age 27. Based on hospital security footage, police have ruled out homicide. Cause of death is suicide. The hospital is not liable. The child in her arms had already succumbed to leukemia prior to the suicide. This is the hospital's diagnostic report. Here you go. 2 flimsy sheets of A4 paper, a brief summary of the lives of Madeline and Joy. Jasper's face was chalk white. His fingers trembled so badly it took him several tries to pick the papers up. He saw the child's full name, and his pupils constricted. Her name was Joy Fletcher. The name was a punch to the gut. Anyone could see the depth of a mother's wish in that name. She had wanted her daughter to always have a smiling face, to be innocent, optimistic, and carefree. Jasper had seen the child once. He could vaguely recall her small, cute face, so full of the life her mother had wished for her. But why was her last name Fletcher? The edges of the paper crumpled in his fist. Jasper gasped for air like a drowning man, the world closing in on him. Pain, like lightning, whipped across his nerves, making him shake uncontrollably. "Investigate," Jasper rasped. "I want you to find out who was Joy Fletcher's biological mother. And I want Madeline's adoption papers for her now." The last few words were a roar. He was a storm of fury, his voice so loud it made his assistant's ears ring. But the assistant didn't flinch. He reached into his pocket, his eyes full of tears, and pulled out a piece of paper, soaked with rain and blood. "Mr. Fletcher," he choked out, "the hospital staff found this in her pocket. The little girl, she was Madeline's biological child. Joy was 5 years old. 5 years ago, they were still together. No matter how much he resisted, how much he tried to flee from it, Jasper couldn't deny that the time he spent with Madeline was the happiest and shortest dream of his life. He suddenly remembered the day before he was sentenced, the day she pointed her finger at him in court. He had been driving out to buy her anti-nausea medication. The young lovers, full of passionate fire, had lost themselves in each other countless times. Had one of those nights planted a seed of their love inside her? If Joy was really his daughter, why had Madeline never said a word? Recalling every moment since their reunion, a chill ran down his spine. His teeth chattered, terrified by his own conclusions. The assistant's words faded into a meaningless buzz. Jasper pushed himself up from the desk, his eyes bloodshot. "Investigate the old case," he rasped. "Find out what really happened back then." He couldn't believe that the Madeline who had so ruthlessly framed him would choose to give birth to his child. The moment the possibility of another truth presented itself, he felt a coppery taste in his throat. He thought he was coughing up blood, but all he saw was a raw, bleeding heart. Torn to pieces, trampled underfoot. It was Madeline's heart. With the Marshall family bankrupt, they no longer had the power to conceal the truth. The facts of the case were easily uncovered. In prison, Jasper had toyed with the idea of digging into it, but in the end, exhausted and disgusted, he had let it go. If only he had lifted a finger then, things would not have ended like this. He gripped the file so tightly the staples dug into his palm, but the physical pain was nothing compared to the agony tearing his soul apart. He remembered Joy's small, shy face. He remembered Madeline's terror. He remembered her rigid body in the club, her bare skin covered in the bruises of a hard-knock life. And Jasper's undisguised malice had been the deepest cut of all, leaving her bleeding and broken. When Penelope Sterling heard that Jasper had committed suicide, she was speechless. She watched in disbelief as his lawyer read out the will in a monotone. Jasper Fletcher had given away his entire fortune. Clutching an urn of ashes and a birth certificate, he had walked into the deep ocean. The dream was like seaweed, tangling around her limbs, making it impossible to escape the feeling of drowning. Madeline took a deep, shuddering breath and opened her eyes. She was being held in a warm embrace. "My Maddie," a woman's voice sobbed, her hand stroking Madeline's pale cheek. "You scared your mother to death. Don't you ever do something so foolish again, do you hear me?" Chapter 6. Madeline's head was splitting. As the dizziness subsided, she saw the face she hadn't seen in 5 years. She stared, taking in the reddened nose, the familiar, loving eyes. This must be heaven, she thought. If she had known she could see her mother after death, perhaps she would have taken joy and left this world much sooner. "Mom!" Her voice was incredibly hoarse, as if she hadn't spoken in a long time. The vibration in her throat made her cough. "Is Joy here? Did Joy come with me?" "Who's Joy?" Sensing her mother's confusion, Madeline frowned and looked around. The room was achingly familiar. It was her childhood bedroom. When the Marshall family went bankrupt, her father had taken all the money and fled the country. This house had been seized long ago to pay off their debts. A jolt of shock went through her. She turned to look at the clock on the wall. The date displayed on it was 2014. In 2014, Madeline was 18. It was her freshman year of college, the year she met Jasper Fletcher. It was still 2 years before Joy's birth, before her family's ruin. A chill crept up her spine. Madeline opened her mouth, but no words came out. Seeing her mother's worried expression, she forced a smile, but tears began to stream down her face. "Mom," she wailed, collapsing into her arms. "I missed you so much." "Silly girl." Her mother hugged her tightly, her heart aching. "I'll go talk to your father. We won't stop you anymore, okay? You can be with whoever you want. It's not like our family can't support you." Madeline was sobbing too hard to understand what she was saying. After she had calmed down, she finally remembered what was happening at this point in time. After pursuing him relentlessly, she had finally won Jasper's heart. She had come home, excited to share the news, only to find that her father had arranged a blind date for her with the son of an old family friend. For a 21st century girl who believed in freedom of choice, it was a devastating blow. Pampered and spoiled, she had never imagined her father would try to force her into a marriage. Terrified, she had resisted his tyranny with all her might. She knew it was just a business arrangement, a merger of families. She couldn't accept it. It was only after she threatened to starve herself and jump off the roof that her father reluctantly canceled the meeting. Looking back now, she realized fate had been warning her even then of the bitter consequences to come. She gave a wry smile, the urge to cry rising again. She hugged her mother tighter and buried her face in her shoulder. Now that she had a second chance, Madeline would not allow herself to repeat the same mistakes. She looked at her hands, unmarred by time and hardship, and made a promise to herself. From this moment on, she would fix every regret. But what was missing? A dull ache throbbed in her chest. Madeline placed a hand on her stomach, her body trembling. If she didn't get together with Jasper, what about Joy? Would she never see that sweet, adorable face again? Would she never have a little girl who was her own flesh and blood, who would call her mommy? She knew she could marry someone else and have children, but Madeline couldn't take that risk. She couldn't accept a life without Joy. But the thought of Jasper brought back the soul-crushing pain, tearing her heart to pieces all over again. She didn't need love in this life. All she wanted was her mother and Joy by her side. From the moment her family went bankrupt, her father fled, and her mother took her own life, Madeline knew that her idyllic life had been nothing but a beautiful, fragile illusion. Her initial resistance had worked. At least her father wasn't forcing her into a blind date right away. Madeline watched her mother pack her bags for college, so anxious she could have bitten her nails off. She didn't want to see Jasper Fletcher. The name she used to say 100 times a day was now a sharp knife. Every time she spoke it, it felt like it was slicing her mouth to ribbons. But for Joy, she had to see him. In her previous life, Madeline had been very discreet about her wealth, partly to protect her boyfriend's pride and partly to avoid jealousy. But now, she couldn't afford to care. The chauffeur pulled the stretch limo up to the campus gate. She got out, her mind heavy with worry, not noticing the envious stares of the other students. "Whoa, Maddie," a classmate exclaimed as she passed by. "Is that your family's car? Damn, no wonder you landed the campus heartthrob. I mean, not that you're not gorgeous, Maddie, but tons of beautiful girls went after Jasper Fletcher, and he turned them all down. Isn't his family, like, not well off at all?" The atmosphere grew awkward, but Madeline was too preoccupied to notice. She nodded absently, her eyes fixing on a figure in the distance, her pupils constricted. Jasper Fletcher. Even knowing that at this point in time they were deeply in love, Madeline shivered under the bright sun. She hadn't even had time to take a step back before Jasper closed the distance between them and pulled her into his arms. "Maddie," his voice was clear, young, and trembling slightly. "Welcome back." A bucket of ice water seemed to dump over her head. Madeline froze, unable to move. She could smell the clean, fresh soap on his clothes, but a deep chill spread through her. "Let me go," she said, her voice low. Jasper seemed taken aback, but he probably assumed she was just shy about public displays of affection. He stepped back, his eyes shining with hope. "I really missed you. Why didn't you contact me at all this break?" Chapter 7. Madeline's mind was a tangled mess. "My dad wouldn't let me," she said, the first excuse that came to mind. The expression on the young man's face shifted subtly, but Madeline didn't notice. She didn't have the courage to face Jasper right now. "I'm going back to my dorm. I have class tomorrow." She took a couple of steps. Jasper didn't stop her. But then, a sudden, powerful premonition washed over her. Madeline glanced back at him. She saw Jasper standing there, his usually deep, cool eyes narrowed slightly, a thoughtful frown on his face. The color drained from Madeline's face. That subconscious gesture, the one he made when he was deep in thought, she had seen it rarely, but she remembered it vividly. The Jasper of 5 years later often looked at her that way, as if he were assessing the value of a piece of meat. That was not an expression the 21-year-old Jasper would ever make. A wave of dizziness washed over her. It seemed impossible, but if she could come back to the past, how could she be so sure about Jasper? If Jasper had come back too, the first thing he would do is seek revenge on her and her father for falsely accusing him. Madeline hadn't gotten far when Jasper caught her hand. His palm was slick with a thin layer of sweat. "Maddie," Jasper said in a low voice, "don't go." He knows, Madeline thought. He's seen through me, but Jasper's behavior was strange. For some reason, her fear began to subside. Just as Jasper had seen through her facade, she could see the deep-seated fear in his eyes. What was he afraid of? Suddenly weary of the pointless games, Madeline thought of her family and her expression hardened. "Jasper, there's no need for this." Their argument at the school gate was starting to attract a crowd. After all, one of them was a well-known figure on campus. Jasper, who was usually so concerned with his image, seemed completely oblivious. His handsome face, usually so composed, was now etched with a heart-wrenching vulnerability as he clung to her hand. "Can we just talk, please?" There weren't many coffee chains back then. Madeline chose a cafe with a minimum charge, but deliberately only ordered for herself, hoping to make things difficult for him. As she expected, he frowned when it was time to pay. Madeline knew that going from wealth to poverty was a painful adjustment. "Maddie," Jasper didn't seem to care about the money. The moment they sat down across from each other, his eyes reddened. "I know," he choked out. "I know Joy was my daughter." So that's it, Madeline thought. Jasper was like this only because he knew he was responsible for the death of his own child. All the love and hate of the past should be erased. She had no intention of disturbing his life. Her fingers stirred her coffee, her expression nonchalant, but her heart ached with an unspoken pain. If Jasper hadn't been so cruel, Joy wouldn't have died. "Do you know that my father framed you?" Sending him to prison had never been her intention. Her family had pressured her to break up with him, but she had refused. But her father, Chairman Marshall, was a ruthless man. To get Jasper away from his daughter, he had staged a car accident, killing a local drunk. And he had forced Madeline to testify that Jasper was the driver. "Maddie, if you don't obey me, I can have someone run over today. Tomorrow, I can have him killed." She was terrified because she knew her father was capable of it. So she had stood on the witness stand and pointed her finger at the man she loved most in the world. Jasper wiped his wet face and looked down, his long eyelashes still glistening with tears. His voice was hoarse. "I know." Madeline felt a bitter laugh rising in her throat. After that, my mother killed herself. I never saw my father again. Tears streamed down her face, but she fought to keep her voice steady. Jasper, the debt I owed you, it should be paid in full by now, right? 3 years in prison for a crime he didn't commit was a tragedy, but her family had been destroyed. She had been left to raise a child alone, homeless and destitute. At her lowest point, she couldn't even afford food. She had waited outside fast food restaurants to scavenge leftovers, just so she could produce milk for the baby in her arms. She was young, beautiful, and alone with a child, and she had endured countless humiliations. Was that enough to pay back the debt her father owed? Her voice was calm, but her words were like knives in Jasper's heart. "It was my fault," he said, his voice raspy. "I'm sorry for what I did to you and our daughter. I'm so sorry, Maddie. I should have investigated." "I don't blame you, Jasper." Even hearing those words brought him no joy. He could hear the profound sorrow behind them, and the bitterness coated his tongue. "It's my own fault that you hate me." She lifted her face, her eyes filled with a deep, unyielding hatred. "But I will hate you for joy." She was so young, she never even got to see the beautiful things in this world. "Jasper, did you hate me that much? So much that you had to take it out on a child? Even if she wasn't your daughter, you should never have treated a child that way." Her accusation was like a slap in the face. Jasper had no response. Even his assistant had had the decency to put aside his prejudice and listen to a mother's desperate plea. But he, in his arrogance and cruelty, had been selfish, brutal, and suspicious to the extreme. Jasper could barely lift his head. He remembered Joy's sweet voice, and a wave of self-loathing washed over him. He grabbed her trembling hand, his tears falling onto her fingers. I'm so sorry," he sobbed. But she pulled her hand away without hesitation, stood up, and took a deep breath. "Jasper Fletcher, I will never forgive you for the rest of my life. Let's just pretend we never met." Madeline's heart was pounding, her ears ringing. She knew Jasper's personality. He wouldn't give up just because of a few words of rejection. And that was exactly her intention. Only by being the one in control could she get her joy back. As she expected, she had only taken a few steps before Jasper grabbed her hand again. His eyes were red from crying, and he looked so unsteady he seemed about to collapse. He fell to his knees in front of her. The cafe was quiet, but a commotion like this was bound to attract attention. Madeline frowned and looked back at him, a mixture of pain and disgust churning inside her. "What are you doing?" Maddie." Jasper was oblivious to the sound of phones secretly recording them. He looked up at her, his face a mask of agony. "Give me another chance, please. I was wrong. I misunderstood you. If I give you a chance, who's going to give Joy a chance?" Madeline's eyes reddened. "Jasper, do you know, the first time Joy saw you, she felt a natural connection to you. She never just walks up to strangers and talks to them like that. You killed our daughter." Jasper's heart was shattered. She wrenched her hand away from him. He pressed his forehead to the floor and sobbed, unable to get up for a long time. Madeline took a deep breath and wiped her tears. She knew that every step she took from now on had to be carefully calculated. There was no room for error. From the day her family went bankrupt, she had learned that the only person she could rely on was herself. Thankfully, it wasn't too late to realize that now. When she got back to her dorm, her roommates were all looking at her with hesitant expressions. Madeline knew that the video from the cafe had already gone viral. Her red-rimmed eyes made them all worry, but Madeline just said calmly, "We just broke up." "It's nothing." "Broke up?" the girl who had seen her at the gate that morning said, surprised. "Maddie, you chased him for 6 months. You just got together. Why did you break up?" Madeline couldn't think of a good reason. "My family arranged a blind date for me, so," she said vaguely. "Speaking of which, I wanted to ask, Maddie, we all knew your family was rich, but we didn't know you were that rich." "A blind date. Is it one of those business marriage things?" Madeline felt a little out of place in the noisy dorm room. It had been a long time since she had been around girls her age, and she felt awkward. One of them noticed her discomfort and came over to give her a gentle hug. "It's okay, Maddie. You're so beautiful, you'll be fine." "Yeah, the guy your dad set you up with can't be that bad, right?" Madeline forced a smile and didn't continue the conversation. She knew Jasper would come begging for her back soon. Aside from whatever genuine or fake love he felt, it was more likely a discomfort with his current situation. But Jasper was an intelligent man. Even after 3 years in prison, it hadn't diminished his brilliance. Of course, part of that was due to her guidance. As the only daughter, even though she hadn't planned on inheriting the company, she had learned a lot over the years about the coming trends and opportunities. And Jasper was a quick study. Back then, Madeline had seriously considered marrying him and giving him half of her family's company to manage. But life was unpredictable. Who could have known? Madeline applied for a year's leave of absence from the university. It didn't take long for Jasper to find out. He was the student council president after all. Madeline wasn't surprised. She looked at the panting Jasper who had rushed to find her, a slight frown on her face. "I told you, there's nothing for us to talk about." "Don't drop out," Jasper said, his face pale but his voice firm. "Maddie, your family's situation? I know all about it, I don't need you to tell me." Her coldness was a blow to him, and he looked ashamed. After a moment, he nodded. "Okay," he said, his voice hoarse. Madeline got a call from her mother. "Maddie, why are you taking a leave of absence? Did something happen?" she asked, surprised. "Mom," Madeline said, packing her bag, "now is the perfect time for me to take a break from school. I want to go work at Dad's company. Didn't he always want me to help out?" "Oh, that's wonderful, Maddie. The reason your father wanted you to go on that blind date was because you never showed any interest in taking over the company. As the only child, he has to find someone talented to manage it. Now that you're willing to learn, he'll be overjoyed." Madeline knew that her family's business, while seemingly prosperous, was actually plagued by complacent and entitled management. Her father had always hoped she would join the company, but back then, she had been too consumed by her relationship to think about her family. Now, her first priority was to stabilize the family business. If she repeated the mistakes of the past, Joy would be born with congenital leukemia again, and she wouldn't be able to give her the care she needed. The next day, Madeline went straight to the company. Her father had clearly been waiting for her. He even had an office ready for her. But Madeline knew that even with her special status, she couldn't just jump in and handle complex matters. The most important thing for her right now was to start from the bottom and identify the truly capable people. Only then could she build a solid foundation for the future of the Marshall Corporation. Chapter 8, but starting at the bottom is hard work. Her father's expression and tone were meaningful. "It's good that you have this ambition, but you must be able to endure hardship and loneliness. What's so hard about working for our own company?" Madeline didn't know, but in just 1 month, she successfully took over a project proposal, a nearly impossible task for a new employee. And she executed it brilliantly. "I should have pulled you out of high school and put you to work here. College was a waste of time." Of course, their own company didn't care about degrees, but Madeline knew that without those years in college, she would never have been able to grasp the family business so quickly. She didn't argue with her father, who was in a good mood. She subtly brought up some issues with the company's management, and seeing his thoughtful expression, she quietly left. She didn't have the power to expose those people herself yet, but as her father, the chairman of the Marshall Corporation, he wouldn't remain ignorant after being warned. Sure enough, within 2 weeks, she noticed that they had all, to varying degrees, relinquished some of their power. Old dogs know old tricks, Madeline thought. Soon after, she saw an unexpected person at the company. "Hello, I'm the new intern." Jasper's eyes greedily roamed her face. He was handsome, with sharp features and a bright smile that could charm anyone. "It's a pleasure to work with you," Madeline said coolly. "I don't remember us hiring any interns this year." The HR representative looked awkward. "Miss Marshall, this was a personal hire by the chairman." Despite the risk of being targeted by her father, Jasper had chosen to intern at this company. They were both the youngest people there, but they were also the ones who best understood the changes the future would bring. Madeline waited for a few days, but she didn't see her father make any moves against Jasper. He just worked late every night. When she asked, her father simply said, "Didn't you two break up?" "We did, but—" "Maddie, no buts." Her father tapped the ash from his cigarette and smiled. "It's better to have him where I can see him. I want to see what kind of man is chasing my daughter." Madeline was dizzy from work. She stood up to stretch her stiff joints, but her vision went black and she nearly collapsed. The office was almost empty. A single dim light was on in a corner, and the sound of typing occasionally broke the silence. Madeline knew it was Jasper. No matter how late she worked, Jasper would be there, silently keeping her company from his own desk. But she had no intention of acknowledging him. She went to the break room to find a Coke. She had low blood sugar, and having missed dinner, she felt a persistent unease. But the fridge was empty. The Coke was gone, and the purchasing department hadn't restocked yet. The dizziness grew worse. She fought it off, trying to make a call. The next moment, a man shoved a piece of candy into her mouth. She quickly chewed and swallowed it, the hard candy making a dull, crunching sound. "You should always carry candy with you." Madeline used to have this problem. When they were dating, Jasper would always have a bag of her favorite candy on him. He remembered all her dislikes, her menstrual cycle, and all her little ailments. He was the perfect boyfriend. Madeline didn't want to get lost in these pointless memories. Her face was pale, her lips colorless. "I don't want this flavor," she said coldly, grabbing Jasper's hand and spitting the last of the candy into his palm. "It's disgusting." Madeline used to love mango flavor as much as she now hated it. She had used such a humiliating tactic, but Jasper acted as if he had been granted a great favor. He didn't seem to mind the mess, clutching the candy in his hand and asking eagerly, "What flavor do you like then?" "I hate anything you give me." Madeline was surprised at her own cruelty, but she didn't regret it. Joy had endured the same verbal abuse. She only regretted being so rational, trying to reason with them. If she wasn't afraid of death, why hadn't she just slapped them? At least it would have spared Joy the pain. Jasper stared at her slender, beautiful profile under the light. Her icy expression seemed to melt slightly, making her seem less unapproachable. With his abilities, he could have interned at any company. But Jasper only wanted to be here, to be close to the 18-year-old Madeline. That was their best time together. The sight made his nose sting. Madeline had already packed her things and was about to leave. Jasper chased after her. "I'll take you home." But Madeline looked at him with a strange expression, dangling her car keys and unlocking a Maybach parked downstairs. "I got my license after my exams." His place was far from here, but Madeline didn't seem to care how he would get back. She revved the engine and reversed out of the garage. It was only then that Jasper realized the vast chasm between their family backgrounds. A belated sense of inferiority washed over him. Madeline had loved him so much back then that she had been willing to put aside her heiress status, to carry a discreetly branded bag on crowded buses and subways, to wear the most expensive lipstick while eating at street stalls. She never cared what gifts he gave her, whether they were expensive or not. She just liked them. Now, unloved, he was like the dirt kicked up by her speeding car, left far behind. When she got home, Madeline sighed wearily. There was so much to learn at the company, and she had to keep Jasper on a string. She had to make him feel guilty, but also hopelessly in love with her. Perhaps it was the long hours they spent working together, or her softened attitude, but Jasper began to feel a glimmer of hope. He became even more attentive, more devoted than before. When Madeline arrived at her desk, there was always a hot breakfast waiting for her. The tasks she assigned were always Jasper's top priority. She dangled the bait, and he followed, but she never gave him so much as a kind word. Finally, one day, Jasper couldn't take it anymore. It was another quiet night in the office. Madeline had been moved to a private office, and Jasper could no longer catch glimpses of her while he worked. He cornered her before she could leave. He looked menacing, but his eyes were red-rimmed. He stood in front of her small office, his expression so forlorn he looked like he was about to cry. "Maddie," he choked out, I just want to see you." Madeline held a stack of documents, her expression neutral. It was impossible to tell if she was happy or sad. "This is an office, not a place for romance. Jasper, if you continue to think this way, I will have you fired." But Jasper grabbed her hand and slowly sank to his knees. He looked up, his face tear-streaked, and pressed his cheek against her hand. "Hit me, strangle me." His expression was sincere. "Maddie, I'm not asking for your forgiveness. I just want to be able to look at you." Madeline felt his warm tears on her skin. She pulled her hand away, and as Jasper's expression turned to despair, she leaned down. They were so close they could see their reflections in each other's eyes. Jasper held his breath, not daring to move, until Madeline placed her hand on his shoulder, slowly wiping away the tears. "Jasper," she whispered, "you disgust me. The Jasper Fletcher I loved in my past life was a brilliant, shining star, the best of all young men. You are not him. You are a poor imitation, a monster wearing his skin. You are cold-blooded, low-class, and reeking of money. I will never love you, Jasper Fletcher." She left, the sound of her heels clicking on the floor as she walked past the dazed, weeping man. Jasper was horrified to realize that he had truly become a different person. He couldn't find a single lovable quality in himself. But then, Madeline stopped. Her voice was soft, like a wisp of smoke curling into his ear. Chapter 9, Jasper, the main reason I hate you is that Joy died on an operating table simply because we were out of money. At that time, a fraction of your wealth could have saved her life. Why didn't you do it? His lips trembled, pupils dilating as he gasped for breath. He shot to his feet, roaring, "I was wrong, I know I was wrong. Maddie, if you forgive me, I'm willing to die." Madeline's steps faltered. She heard the desperation in his voice, her hands clenching into fists. A small smile touched her lips. "All right, then prove it to me." When she arrived at the office the next day, Madeline didn't see Jasper at his desk. A sense of unease crept over her. "Did Jasper call in sick?" "No, he's not here yet," a colleague replied. "No," Madeline bit her lip. For some reason, she thought of how she had relentlessly cornered him yesterday, and a shiver of fear ran down her spine. Thankfully, she hadn't deleted his number. Madeline called him. The first time, no one answered. The second time, after many rings, the call was silently accepted. "Where are you?" She cut straight to the chase, grabbing her bag. After a long pause, Jasper's low voice came through. "Home. It hurts so much." His voice was weak and nasal, as if he were fragile. He took a sharp breath. "Maddie, did you hurt this much back then?" "I'm sorry," Madeline quickly guessed what he was doing. An anger, so intense it surprised even her, surged through her. She sneered, "Jasper, are you insane? Don't think this will make me forgive you," but Jasper could hear the sound of her car engine revving on her end. A sense of accomplishment bloomed within him, and he chuckled softly. "Maddie, you don't want me to die, do you? We still have to raise Joy together. I won't die, but without your love, what's the difference between living and dying?" His voice grew fainter. Madeline hadn't expected Jasper to be so extreme. Her words yesterday were just a bluff. It seemed Jasper had taken the bait. The hatred in her heart boiled over. Finally, she couldn't hold back her fury. "Jasper, if you die, it has nothing to do with me. All the suffering, Joy, and I went through was because of you if you hadn't made things so difficult for us." Crash. The sound of a glass bottle shattering came through the phone. Jasper listened to her voice, which had turned from anger to grief, and his eyes filled with a deep, sorrowful darkness. He truly didn't know what else he could do to earn her forgiveness besides dying, but he was greedy. He wanted a future. The broken base of the beer bottle was sharp. Jasper pressed his palm onto it. The pain sent a wave of cold sweat across his forehead, but he laughed, a broken, tragic sound. The door was kicked open. Madeline stood silhouetted against the light. Despite having imagined the scene, she was still shocked by the sight of so much blood. She looked at Jasper, his eyes wet, his face pale, and without hesitation, she slapped him. The force of the blow turned his head, but he just sobbed and smiled. "Maddie," he reached out a bloody hand to touch the hem of her clothes, but then hesitated, worried he would stain them. "What should I do?" he asked, lost. But he was pulled into a tight embrace. He felt a warmth on his shoulder. Madeline was crying. Don't cry, Jasper closed his eyes, exhausted. I'm sorry, I'm so sorry. Jasper, I hate you, Madeline whispered. You'd better be prepared to spend the rest of your life making it up to me. The ambulance wailed as it arrived. After emergency treatment, Jasper's hand was no longer bleeding. He had 2 minor bone fractures as well. When the nurse asked, he just said he had been drinking at home and fell. But it was obvious to anyone that these were self-inflicted injuries. No one said anything. The wound needs stitches, the doctor said after examining him. It's near a tendon. If it doesn't heal properly, you could lose function in your hand. Family member, please come and sign. Jasper seemed oblivious to the pain, his eyes fixed on Madeline as she leaned over to sign the papers. His hand needed several stitches, and the fractures required rest. For now, he was essentially helpless. All you do is cause trouble, Madeline said, exasperated. From the moment she said those words, Jasper knew he had won. The physical pain was nothing. The blatant disgust and distance she had shown him over the past few days had already brought his heart to a standstill. He needed a breakthrough. He had gambled on the fact that she still had some lingering feelings for him, and he had one. When Madeline submitted her resignation, her father didn't say much. He just looked at his daughter with a meaningful expression. She met his gaze without flinching. You need to be prepared for the consequences of your actions, her father said calmly. You're an adult now, Maddie. I won't be cleaning up your messes anymore. Do you understand? Yes. Madeline chose to stay home and take care of Jasper. He was overwhelmed. She was no longer the sharp, prickly woman she had been. She was gentle, almost tender. Why are you being so nice to me? Jasper asked her this many times. Madeline's only answer was, You're Joy's father. Who else would I take care of? This life was like a beautiful dream. Madeline no longer held his past mistakes against him. They were back to the beginning of their relationship. And her father no longer objected to their love. Jasper found himself pinching his arm to make sure he wasn't dreaming. But everything was real. He was filled with an immense gratitude. But sometimes, Madeline would sit by the window, lost in thought. She was beautiful, and when she was pensive, a faint sadness would cloud her features. At those times, Jasper would look at her and feel like she was about to disappear. After Jasper's injuries had healed a bit, he started cooking for her. It had been a long time since he had been in a kitchen. He was splattered with hot oil several times, but seeing Madeline quietly eat the food he had made filled him with a deep sense of satisfaction. He wished these days could last forever. But 3 months was a long time. Once he was fully recovered, Madeline would surely leave. For a fleeting moment, Jasper considered breaking his own bones again. Madeline went back to the company. Jasper bought a lot of alcohol. He leaned against the table, drinking bottle after bottle. The sense of uncertainty grew stronger. For some reason, the feeling that he was about to lose her was always with him. He had lost his internship at her family's company. He didn't even have a way to see her anymore. Jasper cleaned up the bottles and waited for Madeline to come home from work. He cooked a full meal and waited from dusk till dawn, but she never came. Maddie, when are you coming home? The text he sent was met with silence. He was about to go look for her when she came through the door. She didn't even glance at the lavish meal on the table. She went straight to her room. The small, shabby apartment was a stark contrast to her elegant business attire. For some reason, Jasper looked down at his own oil-stained apron. He froze. He followed her and asked, but she just said wearily, I already ate out. Jasper was silent for a moment. He nodded and threw away the food. The distance between them was a chasm. This gap had always been there, buried deep within him. That's why, in his previous life, he had climbed to the top as soon as he got out of prison. But now, he was back to square one. Jasper took a shower and sat on the edge of the bed, watching Madeline work. Should I go back to school? He asked quietly. A wave of shame washed over him. Madeline looked at him, surprised. Why? Jasper, with your talent, you don't need school. You're just not fully recovered yet. When you're better, I'll talk to my dad about letting you back into the company. A few crumbs from Madeline's table could fill his pockets now. He couldn't lift his head, but a gentle kiss landed on his lips. Why the long face? He was stunned, frozen in place. He stared at her and her face slowly turned red. She looked away, annoyed. "What?" Jasper was ecstatic. Chapter 10, never had Jasper felt such happiness. He pulled Madeline into his arms and gently kissed her cheek. She didn't shy away, her eyes holding a hint of bashfulness. "Maddie," Jasper's voice was thick with emotion, "I will be so good to you." From the moment he first saw her, Jasper knew Madeline was breathtakingly beautiful. Her features were sharp and defined, her nose high and straight, her lips full and red. She was the picture of perfection. When someone like that spoke words of love, they could melt the coldest ice. She reached up and cupped his face, closing her eyes and pecking his lips. His breathing quickened, and he eagerly found her mouth with his own. The chair creaked. "Slow down," Madeline purred. Sunlight streamed through the partially drawn curtains, casting a golden glow on Jasper's strong back. Madeline's eyes were half closed, her expression unreadable. "We don't have a condom," Jasper said, a hint of frustration in his voice. He was about to get up. "Maddie, it's okay." "Jasper, I want to have your baby." A flicker of doubt crossed Jasper's mind, but he didn't dwell on it. The girl beneath him, her soft, long hair a cascade of black silk against the sheets, her face flushed a delicate pink. Madeline looked at him and smiled softly. "You love me," Jasper said, his voice ragged with passion. "Maddie, say you love me. I love you." Jasper couldn't see the calm, composed expression on her face. She said the words so casually, so effortlessly, as if they were as meaningless as any other sentence she might utter. From that day on, Jasper lived in a state of blissful happiness. Madeline forbade him from drinking, so he dutifully locked away all the bottles and glasses. She was always concerned about his health. Jasper was just glad he hadn't picked up smoking yet, so at least he wouldn't have to go through the agony of quitting. He had it all planned out. As soon as he graduated, he would marry her. He would work his way up in her family's company, earn his place, and marry her with his head held high. They would have their own children, their own future. All their worries would disappear. When Jasper woke up, the space beside him was already cold. It was a familiar feeling, but it always left him with a sense of unease. He checked the time and his messages. Everything seemed normal. Madeline had left early. He had been so tired last night, he vaguely remembered hearing something. He had asked her what she was doing, and she had just said she was packing. Now, the memory sent a shiver down his spine. Impossible. He scrambled out of bed and threw open the closet. Her side was empty. The slippers were still there, but he had bought them on a whim, and she had complained they didn't fit right. He hadn't paid any attention. The kitchen, the balcony. Jasper searched the apartment, a dawning horror spreading through him. She had lived here for 4 months, but she hadn't added a single personal touch. The apartment was exactly as it was when she arrived. Jasper's hands were shaking so badly he could barely hold his phone. He called her over and over, but no one answered. The phone was off. His leg wasn't fully healed yet. He limped, sweat beading on his forehead, and went downstairs to hail a cab. He arrived at the Marshall Corporation around noon. A former colleague saw him and asked, surprised, "What are you doing here?" I'm looking for Madeline." His heart pounded in his chest. He stared at his colleague, who looked awkward. "Miss Marshall, I think she's already left." "What?" Jasper was stunned. He grabbed his colleague's shoulders. "What do you mean left? Miss Marshall is still young. She can't be of much help here at the company. Mr. Marshall said that since she's interested in business, she should go abroad to study for a couple of years and expand the company's international presence." Then, the colleague remembered that Jasper was no longer an employee. He slapped his forehead. "Oh man, don't tell anyone I told you this. I'll lose my job." Jasper was gasping for air, unable to process what he was hearing. A plane streaked across the clear blue sky. He didn't know if it was the one carrying Madeline, but he knew he had been abandoned once again. But he couldn't blame anyone. 4 years later. "Alice, bring up the monitor for me." The woman on the stool typed furiously, her fingers flying across the keyboard. Behind her, a blonde, blue-eyed assistant complied, and the monitor flickered to life. She finally had a moment to breathe. The chair swiveled, carrying her slender frame toward the screen. Madeline's expression instantly softened into a warm smile. "Hi, baby, how was your day?" Joy was holding a picture book. Her voice was soft but clear. "Mommy Grandma made carrot and pork rib soup for lunch, and I ate it all." Madeline's lip curled in mock disgust. Joy was exactly like her when it came to food, hating root vegetables with a passion. But Joy was young and easy to fool. A few words of encouragement from her mother, and she would eat it. "What's with that face?" Her mother chided from the other end of the video call. "Maddie, you're a grown woman, and you're still pickier than a child. There's a bowl waiting for you when you get back. This foreign food is all nonsense. Look how skinny you are." Chapter 28, as per original numbering shift. "I know, Mom," Madeline said, exasperated. Joy giggled, finding it amusing to see her grandmother scolding her mother. "You little traitor," Madeline wrinkled her nose at her. After the call, Madeline took a sip of the coffee her assistant handed her. She had a presentation for a group of distributors that afternoon, and she was nervous. Seeing Joy and her mother, who had traveled all the way from home, helped her relax. "Joy is so adorable," her assistant chimed in. "I haven't seen the little princess in ages. Doesn't she like the office? We all miss her." "There are too many people, and she has a bit of a cold. I'm worried about germs." Her mother could never understand why Madeline treated the perfectly healthy Joy like a delicate piece of porcelain. Only Madeline knew. The day she found out she was pregnant, she had dropped everything and flown to the United States, her heart filled with an overwhelming joy and anticipation. This was her Joy, without a doubt. Despite all the hardships of her previous life, she had chosen to come back to her. And Madeline would build the safest, warmest cocoon for her to shield her from all the storms of the world. Madeline didn't tell anyone she was pregnant during her first year in the U.S. She waited patiently for her child's arrival, watching her belly grow like a balloon, never feeling lonely or scared. And Joy was her angel. Throughout the pregnancy, Madeline never experienced any discomfort. She juggled school and work with her round belly, exhausted but happy. The moment she gave birth to a beautiful baby girl, tears streamed down her face. She video called her mother, who was on the other side of the world in the middle of the night, and told her, "You have a granddaughter." Yes, granddaughter, not grandmother to a son-in-law's child. Madeline never intended for Joy to acknowledge Jasper. Even her father, who had been furious at her for running away, couldn't help but smile. "What's her name?" her mother asked, having flown in overnight. Seeing the tiny baby in the bassinet, she whispered, "You've been through so much, my daughter." Her name is Joy Marshall. To maintain the narrative beat of Madeline giving her her own surname, it is adapted as Joy Marshall, implying the later discovery of Fletcher would be equally shocking. Madeline, filled with love, kissed her daughter's soft cheek. This was the one thing she had looked forward to most in this world. The distributors from East Asia were notoriously difficult. Madeline was prepared. She walked to the front of the small conference room with her laptop and remote. The lights came up, illuminating the faces of the audience. Madeline's pupils contracted for a fraction of a second, but her expression remained perfectly composed. She smiled and greeted everyone. She didn't look like a woman who had given birth at all. Her tailored suit fit her perfectly, making her look sharp and competent. "Today is just a preliminary meeting." Her English was fluent and unaccented. "Please, don't be so formal. Feel free to ask any questions. Chairman Marshall will also be observing this meeting remotely." The room was silent. She pressed a button on the remote, and the projector whirred to life. "Based on our company's PL report from the last quarter, and after analysis by our venture capital division, I believe there are a few key points we should focus on." Her expression was calm, her smile unwavering. It was as if the fleeting glimpse of a familiar face had not affected her at all. But Jasper Fletcher's hands were clenched into fists. He couldn't face the Madeline he hadn't seen in 4 years with any semblance of calm. But he knew how hard he had worked to be in this room. One wrong move, and he would be fired and sent back home. And that concludes my summary. Her presentation was flawless, delivered without a single glance at her notes. One of the distributors smiled and began to applaud. I had no idea Mr. Marshall had such a brilliant daughter. I thought he was joking when he told me. After the presentation, Madeline's formal demeanor relaxed. She smiled, the tension leaving her body. Uncle Zimmerman, it's been a long time, you flatter me. I used to hold you in my arms when you were a baby. Mr. Zimmerman shook his head with a smile. The younger generation is truly remarkable. Madeline knew the deal was practically sealed. She had worked tirelessly for 2 months, even flying her mother in to take care of Joy, all for this one deal. She breathed a sigh of relief. Do you have any plans for next week? I know a few excellent Cantonese restaurants here. I'm not sure if they're to your taste. It's been a while since I've had good Cantonese. You're so thoughtful, Mr. Zimmerman chuckled. Let's have dinner then. Oh, and I forgot to introduce you. This is my new assistant, a young man about your age. Very talented. Hello, I'm Madeline Marshall. She extended her hand confidently. A simple ring glinted on her ring finger. Jasper closed his eyes for a second, then reached out and took her hand. Hello. I'm Jasper Fletcher. How much can a person change in 4 years? Jasper didn't know, but the familiar face before him had a completely different aura, a side of Madeline he had never seen before. She was confident, poised, brilliant, and young, a true prodigy, and he was just an assistant. He held her hand a moment too long. Madeline smiled and gently pulled away. See you on Monday night then, she said with a smile. Have a wonderful weekend. Chapter 11, Joy was already asleep when Madeline got home. Exhausted, she took off her coat. The pot on the induction stove was simmering, its lid rattling. Her mother came out and took her bag. You must be exhausted, she said, her voice full of concern. Will things get easier now? Yes. Madeline had just sat down when a large bowl of pork rib soup was placed in front of her. A few slices of carrot floated in the broth, a tolerable amount. She took a spoonful and said, her mouth full, I'm taking Joy to the amusement park tomorrow afternoon. You're already so tired. You can go another time. No, Madeline wiped her mouth, her smile gentle. Mom, I made a promise to her. You've been with her all week. You need a break. It's not tiring to be with Joy, her mother said, a little flustered. What 3-year-old is as well behaved as her? She eats and gets dressed by herself, and she's so cute. Madeline didn't say much more. She knew that Joy only resembled her about 40%. Her deep-set eyes and brown hair, so unusual for a non-mixed-race child, were all inherited from Jasper. But she didn't mind. After all, Jasper was a handsome man. After a shower, Madeline went to her bedroom. Joy was lying on the large bed, her face buried in the covers. They usually slept in separate rooms, but Madeline had been so busy this week. Joy didn't say anything, but she missed her. When she heard her mother was coming home tonight, she had insisted on sleeping with her. Madeline quietly slipped into bed. Joy smacked her lips, her eyelashes fluttering, and sleepily reached out for a hug. Madeline held her close, her heart melting into a warm puddle. Mommy, Joy snuggled against her, are we going to the amusement park tomorrow? Yes, Madeline sighed softly, kissing her small hand. Sleep now, baby. She hadn't forgotten the shock of seeing Jasper today. Only when she held Joy did she feel a sense of security. Thankfully, Joy had been born perfectly healthy this time. No matter how many tests they ran, they couldn't find any congenital diseases. Madeline didn't know if it was because of the months she had spent meticulously caring for Jasper's health, or her own careful prenatal care this time around. Either way, everything was going according to plan. Jasper was the only variable. The next morning, before Madeline was fully awake, she heard Joy let out a squeal of delight. But she quickly covered her mouth, climbed out of bed, and ran out of the room. Grandma, when did Mommy get home? Last night, sweetie. Now put on your socks, okay? Okay, Grandma, did you make porridge? Yes, it's almost ready. Go brush your teeth and wash your face. The lively sounds of the morning slowly woke Madeline up, but she stayed in bed until Joy, smelling of fresh toothpaste, came over and kissed her cheek. Mommy, wake up, Grandma made fish porridge. The little girl propped her chin on her hands and watched her mother laze in bed. Mommy's a sleepyhead, she giggled. Joy, pull mommy up, Madeline groaned. The bed monster is eating me. Joy giggled and tugged at her arm. Madeline wanted to stay in bed, but she had promised to take Joy to the amusement park. There was no backing out. The weather wasn't cold for this time of year in the US, but they still needed to wear a thick jacket. Joy, can you pick out your own clothes and fill up your water bottle? Yes, Madeline smiled as she watched her daughter skip away. Her mother sat down beside her, a hesitant look on her face. Maddie, you never tell us who Joy's father is, and that's fine, but you should find someone for yourself. Madeline nearly spit out her water. Mom, what are you talking about? Joy is so young. Who knows if she would accept a new man in the house? Besides, I'm only 22. You can get married at 22, can't you? Her mother smiled. With your looks and background, it wouldn't be hard to find someone. And it would be easy to find a man who would accept Joy. We don't need an arranged marriage anymore. Just find someone you like. Money isn't an issue. The way her parents tried to set her up was so different now compared to her past life. Madeline sighed and finished her water. Okay, I get it. For Madeline, anyone besides her mother and daughter was a burden. But if it would stop her parents from worrying, she wouldn't be against marrying someone. As long as it wasn't the man standing in front of her. Madeline was just glad Joy was still in the car. Her expression was cold. Mr. Fletcher, this is my personal time. I'm not discussing work. If you have any questions, you can ask me at the office. 4 years had made Jasper taller and more imposing. He wore a black trench coat that made his face look pale, and his deep-set eyes held a heavy, melancholic air. He was much more mature now, much closer to the man who had hurt her. A chill ran down Madeline's spine, but she couldn't retreat. Madeline, Jasper said in a low voice, long time no see. Long time no see, Madeline said quickly, but I'm not in the mood to catch up right now. Please move. She grabbed the 2 bottles of milk and got back in the car. The windows were tinted, so Jasper couldn't see Joy. The thought made her tense. In the back seat, Joy looked at her curiously. Mommy, where's my milk? Here you go. Madeline unscrewed the cap and handed it to her. Her thoughts were in a jumble. Seeing Joy's small figure in the rearview mirror, she couldn't help but ask, Joy, do you want to meet your father? Father? Joy tilted her head, thinking for a moment, then shook her head. No, why not? Because Mommy is my father. Mommy can do everything by herself. In that moment, tears welled up in Madeline's eyes. She took a deep breath and smiled. Oh, Joy, thank you. The amusement park was crowded with children. Madeline held Joy's hand tightly, not daring to let go. But in the brief moment it took to buy a cone and take out her wallet, Joy was gone. Madeline's hands trembled. She whipped her head around, frantically calling Joy's name, her eyes scanning the crowd for her small figure. The ice cream cone fell to the ground. Madeline pushed through the crowd, tears streaming down her face. Joy Marshall, Joy, where are you? She cried, her voice filled with despair. Ma'am, what's wrong? A staff member rushed over and supported her as her legs gave way. Are you okay? My child, Madeline sobbed, grabbing the staff member's arm. My child is gone, my Joy. Okay, what's her name? Joy. Okay, ma'am, please don't panic. We'll have security at the gates check everyone. We'll make sure she's still in the park. Madeline couldn't believe Joy was gone. She was shaking, desperately trying to wipe away her tears as she cried out her daughter's name. She shouldn't have brought her to such a crowded place if something happened to Joy. Madeline didn't know what she would do. She might not have the will to live anymore. But then, she saw a tall, long-legged man carrying a child, walking quickly toward her. Joy, Madeline didn't even notice who was carrying her. She rushed forward and saw that Joy's eyes were closed, a large gash on her forehead, and her hair was full of grass. What happened to her? Jasper spoke quickly. I followed you here. When you were waiting for the ice cream, I saw her squatting by the side of the path. She seemed dizzy. She rolled down the grassy slope. Maddie, don't cry, we need to get her to a hospital now. Jasper didn't even have time to wonder why Joy was so big. He held the child and ran toward the emergency room. The doctors here, though usually slow, were quick to act when it came to children. They first ruled out any other illnesses, then wheeled the unconscious child to get an MRI. Her head injury was just a scrape, but the sudden loss of consciousness was concerning. Chapter 12. From that moment on, Madeline's tears didn't stop. She slid down the hospital wall, sobbing. Jasper, still catching his breath from the run, knelt beside her, looking at her tear-streaked face. "She'll be okay," Jasper said. "Have faith in Joy." At this point, all the love and hate between them was irrelevant. All Madeline wanted was for Joy to be safe. She nodded, still crying. The results came back quickly. The doctor looked at the image of Joy's brain, her expression grave. She pointed to a small shadow just behind the frontal lobe. "We suspect a brain tumor," she said to Madeline. "We need to do further tests. Don't leave the hospital." The words were a hammer blow, shattering the last of Madeline's composure. She held the report, her hands shaking, and fell to her knees, wailing. When Joy was born, Madeline had thanked every god she could think of for giving her a healthy daughter. But now, fate was playing a cruel joke on her. Her mother rushed from home. She froze when she saw Jasper, then a look of understanding dawned on her face. Jasper knew what that look meant. In his past life, when he saw Joy, she was so thin she was barely half a person. She was 4 or 5 years old but looked like a toddler. He hadn't seen the resemblance then. But in this life, Joy had been well cared for. She was round-faced and adorable. One look, and he knew she was his child. But why? Why leukemia then, and a brain tumor now? Why wouldn't fate leave this child alone? He looked at Madeline, who was sobbing in her mother's arms, and felt a profound sense of mockery. The doctor came out with a form and handed it to him. "Your daughter has been diagnosed with a brain tumor. She's very young and the tumor is small. The location makes it difficult to remove. We do not recommend surgery at this time. In 6 months, the tumor will likely not be life-threatening, but it could press on her optic nerve and cause permanent vision loss. But if we operate now, the success rate is very low." Jasper felt dizzy, his face turning pale. He stared at the critical diagnosis form, his breathing shallow. He couldn't bring himself to tell Madeline. "Conservative treatment," Madeline said, her voice high and strained. "Doctor, I choose conservative treatment." It was a choice between her eyesight and her life. Madeline didn't have to think twice. The doctor wasn't surprised. "Okay, please sign here. I'm her mother. My decision is the one that matters." A fierce argument erupted in the stairwell. Madeline was so angry her chest heaved. "This has nothing to do with you. Get out, get away from me." "Madeline," Jasper raised his voice. "Calm down, I've done the research. This surgery is possible. We just need to go to a different hospital. Why won't you trust the 95% success rate? Why would you let a tumor grow in her brain? What if Joy is in the 5%? Madeline screamed the words, her energy spent. She glared at him with hatred because he had spoken her deepest fear. She couldn't bear the risk of losing Joy. Even if it meant she would be blind for the rest of her life, she would selfishly keep her by her side. What if she goes blind? You want her to be blind for the rest of her life? A sharp slap echoed in the stairwell. Madeline's lips trembled, tears dripping from her chin. "So what if she's blind? I can take care of her. This is my daughter. Don't you say another word. She's my daughter too, isn't she?" "Maddie, can't you lean on me, just a little?" Jasper's voice was soft, echoing in the stairwell. Before Madeline could answer, her mother pushed open the fire door. "Maddie, Joy is crying for you. Come quickly." Before she left, Madeline looked at Jasper's face and said, each word laced with venom, "Yes, but you're just a sperm donor. I was only with you for one thing. All I ever wanted was Joy." "Jasper, you're broke now, aren't you?" She pulled a wad of cash from her purse and threw it at him. "Consider this my payment for your services. You're worth about this much." The bills fluttered around him like snowflakes. Jasper closed his eyes, the pain so intense he could barely speak. He was in a confined space, being humiliated by Madeline, justifiably so. She was just stating facts. And what had he done? He had watched her strip down to her last piece of clothing and thrown money at her. Karma, payback. It was real. When Joy woke up, she was in complete darkness. She was terrified. If Madeline moved even slightly, she would clutch her clothes and whimper. "Mommy, I'm scared." Joy didn't understand what blindness was. "Why are the lights off?" "Mommy, can you turn on the lights?" She felt a hot tear fall on her cheek, followed by her mother's warmth against her skin. Madeline held her tight. "Joy, do you want me to read you a story?" "Okay." Joy was a very well-behaved child. Madeline gently told her fables she had never heard before. She told her about the blind men and the elephant, about what it meant to be blind, what it meant to be nearsighted. Joy nodded occasionally. "Mommy, so am I blind now?" Joy asked, confused. "Will I never be able to see you again?" Madeline held her, sobbing. If her mother hadn't been there, Madeline wouldn't have known how to handle this. She was exhausted, both physically and mentally, and she still had to deal with the distributors who had come all this way. "I'll go," Jasper said without hesitation. "The contract is already signed. The dinner is just a formality. You stay here with Joy." Madeline leaned against the white wall and nodded. She quickly composed herself before seeing Joy, so as not to scare the already frightened girl. Only after Joy had fallen asleep did Madeline allow herself to show a little vulnerability. Her mother sighed softly. "Let's hire a nurse, Maddie. Between me and a nurse, we can take care of Joy." "Mom," Madeline said sadly, "you saw her. She can't be without me." Even the strongest child would be scared at a time like this. Only after Joy was sound asleep did Madeline dare to sneak out for a moment. She found the doctor to confirm the treatment plan. "Do we really have to wait 6 months?" "Yes," the doctor frowned, looking at Joy's report. He pointed to the shadow. "See, the location is very tricky. You should prepare for the possibility of blindness. The cornea will be damaged eventually." Madeline clutched her chest, her heart aching. Her Joy was so young. Why did she have to lose her sight? How could she accept this? She returned to the room in a daze. She heard Joy's voice and quickened her pace, but stopped at the partially open door. "Are you Mommy's friend? Why haven't I ever seen you before?" "Because Uncle did a lot of bad things, and Mommy doesn't like me." Jasper sat by the bed, holding Joy's hand. "Joy, are you feeling uncomfortable anywhere?" "No, it's just dark and I'm a little scared." "I'll stay with you, okay? What story do you want to hear? I'll read to you." "When is Mommy coming back?" "Soon, Joy." Jasper stroked her cheek. "Don't be scared." Joy nodded. "I'm not scared, Uncle. The bad things you did, do you know you were wrong?" Jasper was stunned. Joy continued, "I've done a lot of bad things too. I knocked over my dinner plate, I made Mommy let me watch TV when it was bedtime, and I ate too many ice creams and lollipops. But I knew it was wrong, and I apologized to Mommy, and she forgave me." "Uncle, if you know you were wrong, I can ask Mommy if she's forgiven you, okay?" Chapter 13, in an instant, Jasper's eyes reddened completely. He fought to control his breathing, lowered his head, and pressed his forehead into Joy's small palm. "I'm sorry," he said, his voice choked with sobs. "I'm so sorry, Joy. I know I was wrong." Never had Jasper felt a pain so acute. He knew his sins were grave, and Joy was like an angel sent from heaven to purify his soul. The feeling was both devastating and liberating, a kind of absolution. Madeline leaned against the wall, silent tears streaming down her face. Suddenly, she didn't know if what she was doing was right or wrong. If Joy really did lose her sight, would she want to live? Would she be willing to accept a world of darkness? Perhaps it was the bond of blood, but Joy took a surprising liking to Jasper. "I quit my job," he said plainly. "Right now, you can't manage both. Go to work. I'll stay with Joy for you." Her mother was getting older, and taking care of a completely blind child was too much for her. Hiring a caregiver was also a source of anxiety. Since Jasper was determined, Madeline didn't argue. She gave him a long look and threw herself into her work. She was so busy that sometimes she would forget to eat lunch and would have to sleep in her office. On the few occasions she managed to visit the hospital, she would witness Joy having a tantrum with Jasper. As good-natured as she was only 4, and often she couldn't understand why she had suddenly lost her sight. Jasper was coaxing her to eat. She forced down a few bites, then suddenly burst into tears. "Uncle, where's my Mommy? Does Mommy not like Joy anymore? I can't see, I'm so scared." She reached for Jasper's sleeve, accidentally knocking over the bowl. To protect her from getting burned, Jasper instinctively took the full force of the scalding hot soup on his own legs. A sheen of cold sweat broke out on his forehead, but he didn't make a sound. He picked Joy up and kissed her cheek. "Sweetheart, how could your mommy not want you? You can't see now, but you will be able to see again. Mommy is making money to buy you new eyes, okay? No more crying." Joy didn't know he was burned. She just kept crying, wanting to be held and walked around. So Jasper, enduring the pain of his scalded legs rubbing against his trousers, stood up and patted her back. Only when Joy had calmed down could he continue feeding her. Taking care of a child was hard. Taking care of a blind child was even harder. Days passed like this. By the time Madeline had finished her work as quickly as possible, Joy, under Jasper's daily care, was no longer so sensitive and timid. She tilted her slightly thinner face up, her grape-like eyes no longer shining, but her smile was sweet. "Mommy, I missed you so much." Madeline felt the urge to cry again. She wiped her face, picked Joy up and said, "Mommy missed you too. You've been so good lately." "Really?" Joy giggled. "Did Uncle tell you?" "Mommy, Uncle is really nice to me." Madeline's eyes scanned the room, but Jasper was gone. She turned her head and saw him standing at the door, talking to a doctor. "He probably thinks I hate him," she thought. Madeline lowered her gaze. After the doctor left, she looked at Jasper, who had a relieved smile on his face. "Thank you for everything, really." "It's what I should do," Jasper smiled. "But Maddie, can I still come and see Joy in the future? Is Uncle leaving?" Joy immediately tugged on Madeline's sleeve, shaking her head vigorously. "Mommy, please don't let Uncle go." "You little rascal, who do you like more, Mommy or Uncle?" "Mommy, of course." Joy's words were as sweet as honey. "But I really like Uncle too." "Mommy, isn't Grandma going back home soon? There will be no one to stay with me, and I'll be scared. Can Uncle come and stay?" Madeline held Joy and thought for a long time. Jasper held his breath, as if waiting for a verdict. Finally, Madeline nodded. "It's Joy's birthday soon. If you don't have anything else to do, you can stay at my place." Seeing the light return to his eyes, Madeline added, "You can leave after Joy's surgery." Although Madeline had not conceded much, for Jasper, this was the best possible outcome. He thought of the doctor's hesitant expression, of Joy's beautiful but empty eyes, and smiled. "Uncle, can you get my toys for me?" Joy was already comfortable ordering Jasper around, and Jasper was more than happy to oblige. They sat on the heated floor, playing with plastic pots and pans. "I want a cook for Mommy," Joy said, feeling the small spatula. "Uncle, can you cook?" "Of course, do you want to help me?" "Yes," but when Jasper carried her to the kitchen, she hesitated. "But I can't see. What if I drop the plates?" "You won't," Jasper's heart softened. "I'll help you." Madeline smelled the rich aroma of food as soon as she opened the door. She heard laughter coming from the kitchen. Joy couldn't see, so Jasper was guiding her hands to touch different fruits and vegetables, letting her guess what they were. A 4-year-old child doesn't know many things. Joy guessed wrong several times, but she wasn't upset. She just giggled. "Uncle, you know so much," Jasper nuzzled her cheek with his nose. "Well, I'm a lot older than you." Joy's hand gently touched his face, tracing his features. A hint of sadness crept into her voice. "I don't even know what you look like." Madeline was taken aback. It was true. Jasper had never seen Joy when she could still see. She couldn't recognize his face. Jasper smiled. "Then you'll just have to touch my face a lot, and you'll remember." Seeing Madeline, Jasper handed Joy to her and went back to the kitchen to wash vegetables. His hand, which had been cut by the broken bottle years ago, had never fully healed. Even now, it trembled slightly as he held the knife. "Is Joy's birthday in 2 weeks?" "Yes," Jasper said. "Joy, what kind of cake do you want?" "I want an ice cream cake. It's so cold, and you still want ice cream. You'd better ask your mother if that's okay." Seeing Joy's hopeful face, Madeline kissed her cheek. "Okay, but you can't have too much. You have to eat your dinner properly, deal." Madeline would occasionally try to teach Joy how to use utensils and navigate the house while being blind. It was a painstaking task for her, but Jasper seemed to be completely hands-off. His attitude was so different from how he usually was with Joy. Madeline had asked him about it, but he just said that Joy was still young and there was no rush. Madeline didn't understand. The day before Joy's birthday, Madeline and Jasper took her for a brain scan. Looking at the progression, it won't be long. We can probably book the operating room for next week, the doctor pointed to the CT scan. The cornea is also showing signs of damage. If things continue as they are, the optic nerve should recover after the tumor is removed, but, seeing Madeline's downcast expression, the doctor added, "We can look for a donor later. Don't lose hope." "Thank you, doctor." Despite the doctor's reassurance, Madeline knew that finding a cornea donor was a long shot. There were too many people waiting and not enough donors. How long would her Joy have to wait? Jasper gently patted her shoulder. "Don't be so sad, there's still hope," he smiled warmly. "Let's go order a cake for Joy." They had always been with Joy, so Madeline couldn't say many things. During a red light, she glanced at Jasper's thoughtful face and said, "Thank you so much for everything." Regardless of whether he was her biological father, legally, Jasper had no obligation to take care of Joy. But if it hadn't been for him, Madeline would have been at her wits' end. Jasper came back to himself and lowered his eyes. The bloody events of their past life seemed so distant now. Seeing Jasper again, Madeline no longer felt the fear she once did. And since their reunion, Jasper had never once shown any sign of wanting her forgiveness. Had he finally given up? Madeline wouldn't ask what he hadn't said. She stepped on the gas, and over the sound of the engine, she heard a soft, "I'm sorry." An apology that was years too late. Joy woke up in the back seat. She knew she was in her car seat, and hearing the adults talking, she wasn't scared. "Mommy, are we going to order a cake?" "Yes, your favorite ice cream cake." The clerk looked at the adorable but blind little girl with pity, but she didn't say anything. Madeline saw the look, and it was like a knife to her heart. She turned away, unable to watch Joy chatting happily with Jasper. "Sweetie, do you want extra cream and strawberries?" The clerk knelt down and asked Joy gently. "Your dad will want to buy them for you." Joy was clearly taken aback. "He's not my dad," she corrected her. "Thank you, miss, I want extra cream." Jasper's hand, which was holding hers, trembled. He didn't say anything. He paid and confirmed the delivery time. "Let's go, Joy," Madeline said, her mind in a turmoil. "Tomorrow's your birthday. Can we set a date for the surgery?" Jasper was driving on the way back. "So soon?" "Yes," Madeline was in the back with Joy. After a moment's hesitation, she said, "Will you be there, waiting for her when she comes out?" Joy immediately sat up straight. "Uncle, you have to wait for me. You said you would take me back to your home country to play." Jasper smiled and nodded. That night, after they had put Joy to bed, they decorated the room and prepared the food. Jasper took out a small camera and smiled. "I just bought this. It's a gift for Joy." Madeline's heart sank. "She can't see," she said, her voice full of helpless sadness. "She will," Jasper interrupted her. "She will see." "Okay," Madeline smiled. "Let's just say it's a blessing from her father." She felt the words were inappropriate as soon as she said them, but Jasper smiled so happily that she didn't say anything more. They didn't invite many people to the party, but Joy was still very happy. She couldn't see, but she knew there were a few children her age around her. They kindly guided her hands to touch the balloons and presents. Jasper came over and picked her up. "Joy, this is from Uncle." A camera, Joy was delighted as she felt its smooth shape. "Uncle, I want to take a picture with you," they asked one of the other children to press the shutter. After a click, the flash went off, but Joy was oblivious. "Aw, I wish I could see it," Joy said, feeling the photo paper. She was a little disappointed, but then she felt her small bag, carefully put the photo inside, and smiled sweetly. "It's okay, Mommy can see it for me." "Yes," Jasper's eyes were red, but he smiled. "Okay, Joy will see it." He said it with such conviction, as if he was absolutely certain. Chapter 14, Joy's surgery day arrived, and Madeline was a nervous wreck. They had been admitted to the hospital 3 days prior and were scheduled for the first operation of the day. The doctor called Madeline to sign the pre-op consent forms. She couldn't find Jasper anywhere. He had been there yesterday, but now he was gone. She had to leave Joy with a nurse. The English forms gave her a headache, but they were all standard procedure. Madeline signed the last page and asked, confused, "Does it really take this long?" "Yes, ma'am. Please be patient. We will do our very best." When she returned, Joy was clearly anxious. She clutched her mother's hand. "Where did Uncle go? He promised he would wait for me." Madeline was angry too, but she had called him many times and couldn't get through. She could only reassure Joy, "Uncle will be back soon." But by the time Joy was wheeled into the operating room, Jasper still hadn't appeared. At that moment, Madeline realized how much she needed someone to lean on. In times of panic, even just a hand to hold and embrace could be incredibly comforting. But Jasper wasn't there. What was he doing? Why had he changed his mind at the last minute? For some reason, Madeline's heart was pounding. She kept calling his number, but it always went to voicemail. At 12:30 p.m., as Joy's surgery was nearing its end, she received a voicemail. "Maddie, I've thought about it for a long time, and I decided to leave you this message. Please forgive me for leaving without saying goodbye. I have something more important to do. In the 4 years we were apart, I often wondered why the sweet, kind you could be so cruel to me. But I didn't have to think too hard to know that it was because I had gone too far, because I had hurt you too deeply. I've told you I'm sorry so many times, but you only forgave me once. That was the greatest blessing of my life. Perhaps my purpose in this second life was to meet you and do what I was meant to do. I am so grateful that I had the chance to talk and play with Joy. Once, in a dream, I heard her call me Daddy. Maybe she wasn't calling me, but I heard it and I was so happy. Maddie, I love you. I love Joy just as much. But I also know that my sins are too great, and I have to leave. I'm sorry, Maddie. I hope you and Joy live a happy life, just like the name you gave her. Joy is a beautiful name. Goodbye, Maddie." As if she had expected it, Madeline's eyes widened in disbelief. The operating room doors slowly opened, and she saw the doctor walking toward her, a smile on his face. "A complete success, congratulations. Both the cornea transplant and the tumor removal were perfect. Your daughter will be able to see again." The doctor looked at the woman who was sobbing so hard she couldn't stand. Ma'am, are you okay?" No wonder the surgery took so long. No wonder Jasper had disappeared yesterday. The tears streamed down Madeline's face, blurring her vision. "You fool," she choked out. She was still holding Joy's things. Something in the small bag was pressing against her hand. Through her tear-filled eyes, she gently took out the Polaroid photo. Joy's face was smeared with cream, a small crown on her head. She was squinting at the camera, laughing. And Jasper was kneeling beside her, his gaze piercing through the photo, meeting hers. It was the love and apology he could never say out loud.